2, 1.
Phillips, Chairman of the Committee, and on my left is Councillor Sweatman, my Vice Chairman. To my right is Sally Blomfield, the Assistant Director for Planning and Sustainable Development. To her right is Paula Slim, the Solicitor. In the corners behind us are the members of Democratic Services, who will be running the technology and keeping the minutes for this meeting. And in front of me are the members of the committee who will be discussing and making the decisions this afternoon. So if we can move to the agenda, to receive apologies of absence, we have 3 from Councillors Kennedy, Wood and Peacock. Item 2, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. If members have any, Councillor Bates.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I was a member of Haywards Heath Town Council up until May, and during the last 6 months, they discussed Hurst Farm, the application here, the third one today, in quite a lot of detailed meetings. I was only invited as a guest, and it wasn't really involved in taking decisions, but I thought I'd mention this because there was quite a considerable amount of discussion on this application by one authority.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Any other members have any declarations to make? No? Fine, thank you. So moving on to item 3, can members indicate verbally their agreement with the minutes of the meeting of the 13th of July? Are they agreed, please? Agreed. Thank you. Item 4, to consider any items that the Chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. So we now move on to the substantive part of the meeting. Items recommended for approval. The first item is item 5, DM220596, NCP Limited, Harlands Road Car Park, Harlands Road, Haywards Heath. We have 4 speakers on this item. The public speakers, you are restricted to 3 minutes. On the screen, it will indicate going to amber when 2 minutes are up, and after 3 minutes, there will be a red light. I will try and warn you at the 1 minute time, but when we get the red light, would you please use 1 sentence to complete your presentation? Thank you very much. So the first speaker is Jane Wheatley. Sorry. So I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah. And sorry. Can I ask the planning officer to make the presentation before you speak? Sorry. So Andy Watt is the planning officer for this application. So please, Andy, the floor's all yours.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is for the clearance of the site and construction of a building containing 64 residential apartments with associated access, car parking, landscaping and ancillary works. Members have had time to look at the update sheet, and members will note that there is a further letter of objection. We've added the detail of the design principles in the design guide to aid your understanding. And there is a very recent appeal decision about car parking in the vicinity. And the appeal decision refers to a site that I'll make reference to in the presentation. The site is located on the inner corner of a one-way gyratory system with Milton Road to the south-east. We haven't got that there yet.
We need to get the presentation live.
Sorry, we do have a slight technical issue. The presentation should be on the screen.
Yes.
Right, we're in business by the looks of it.
So members have just had a slightly longer period to consider the update sheet. The site, as you can see here, I'll use my arrow, is located with Milton Road to the southeast and Harlands Road to the northeast. It's currently in use as a surface car park with access from Harlands Road to the far north. There are 91 spaces within the site, with some vegetation screening on the boundaries, particularly to the southeast and to the northeast. And within the site, land levels drop from southeast to northwest by about 5 metres. I'll just show an aerial photo with the site in context. So this is the site here. To the northwest, you have Harlands House. That's a 4 and 5 storey building. Beyond this is Chester House, which is listed on here as the Aspen, and that is the site to which that appeal decision referenced in the update sheet refers to. You have a 5-storey office building to the north, that's Burns House. You have the Sainsbury's supermarket and its retail area opposite the site, and Milton House to the southeast, and the Great Heathmead block of flats to the southwest, specifically Pinfold House, and some flats over garage which are arranged perpendicular to the site. The proposed site plan, the proposed scheme is for the clearance of the site and the construction of a building containing 64 apartments. As before, the building is located to the front of the site, which is set out here, which I'll just draw, with an underground car park and an external car park to the rear, and that provides 41 spaces in total. And the existing access onto Harlands Road is utilised as it is at the moment. There are 7 floors in total in this building, but because of the sloping ground levels, this is expressed as 4, 5 or 6 stories at each point, which will become clearer in the elevations. Just go through the floor plans. I'll take these quite quickly, other than the first 2. On the proposed lower ground floor, this is the access to the underground car parking area, and there's 24 spaces within that area. 6 of those spaces are stacking spaces. 4 of them are electric vehicle charging points, charging spaces, and 2 are accessible spaces. There's also a cycle storage area here, a plant room with an internal stairwell, refuse stores within a chamfered corner of the building, and you have 2 exits at the rear of the building, which are connected to stairwells that run throughout the building, plus 2 lifts. On the ground floor, the main entrance at street level is here onto Harlands Road via a recessed porch, and you also have a plant room which is connected to the lower ground floor level, and then you have the residential flats here, 12 of them on this floor, and all accessed via a long central corridor. On the first floor and the second floor, they are exactly the same. You have 14 units, again, all connected by the central straight corridor. On the third floor, there's 13 units, again, with that same internal arrangement. On the fourth floor, there's 11 units, but there's also a communal terrace, a landscaped area, and 3 duplex apartments, which on the top, 5th floor, you can see here, and they also have balconies to the rear, and this is showing an indicative photovoltaic layout on the roof. So turning to the elevations, this is the view that you would see from the front alongside Harlands Road. The design ethos has been to create separate volumes of the building in order to break down its overall mass. So that's emphasised by what we call a vertical ordering of the building, all the windows lining up with each other, and expressed in the design through some notches at various points, very narrow notches, and some recessed setbacks. The materials are brick with some brick detailing. That includes corbelling, soldier coursing, and perforated brickwork. And then at the top level, top story, you have coloured feature panels with fluted details. You have window reveals to give some definition to the elevation of the building. And the balconies will have aluminium railings, and there'll also be some glazed balustrading as well. Should just point out that this area here relates to the Shamford Undercroft, and these are or some perforated brickwork. And you can see above that the communal roof terrace on the 4th floor. On the rear elevation, the elevational treatment continues with predominantly brick elevations, with coloured featured panels on the top floor. Along the ground floor, predominantly there are aluminium grills to the rear, so it's open to that car parking basement area. And then here are the 2 the exit doors on that rear elevation. And these are the duplex apartments at the top. So from this elevation, you would see a maximum of 7 stories. But in reality, that top level is set back towards the front of the building, not at the rear. To the side elevation, here is the vehicle access on the northwest side with perforated brickwork either side of it. Some brick detailing around the windows, and similar brickwork with detailing on the elevation facing onto Milton Road. Just show you a couple of landscaping plans. So in order to achieve the building at the front of the site, there are the removal of several trees, but they are all category C trees or category U. So there is no problem with their removal, and also the removal of a self-seeded goat willow on the opposite rear boundary. The two main trees that are visible on the site are the two London plane trees. They are to be retained, and also the Norway maple, which is within the ownership of Great Heathmead, is also to be retained. And it should be noted that the application has been amended so that the trees on the Milton Road elevation will also be retained. With some additional landscaping, there will be some trees planted in tree pits along the Harlands Road frontage, and there'll be some structural planting towards the rear of the site beyond a retaining wall and some climbers in front of that. You have the tarmacked area to the driveway, and then concrete block paving for the parking area at the rear. Then you have pedestrian paving at the front towards the main entrance, and pedestrian paving around the rear of the building from the rear exits. On the fourth floor, there will be a communal terrace, and that will have a pergola on it with some bug house towers, a bench, and block paving, metal beds with trellis as well. Just show you a couple of images to put that all together. This is the view of the building as you would see it from the northeast towards the front. So this is the entrance to the site, and you can see how that steps up as the site climbs the hill. You can see this is the main entrance for the residents, and this is the Shamford area, which is where the refuse storage is just behind, and the access to the Undercroft area to the side. And this is the view taken from the Milton Road elevation, so looking at the tallest part of the building, and then as it steps down, the Harlands Road frontage. As set out in the report, in section 8, there was a previous planning permission granted on this site in February 2020 for 40 apartments and 40 car parking spaces, and this is what sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry, this is the street. This is the street scene for the current application in context with Milton House and Harlands House, and this is the comparison with the approved scheme. So the red line was as approved in 2020, and the blue line is showing the proposal as it is before you today. As set out in paragraph 12.116, a commencement appears to have been made on implementing that application. All the pre-commencement conditions have been discharged. This would appear to be a commencement, although we don't have anything lawful, as in a lawful development certificate, to confirm that at this stage. So the approved site plan, you can see the building was located again towards the front of the site. Similar footprint, similar area, but set back just a little bit. And that, again, utilised the access from Harlands Road as existing. It had a lower ground floor car park beneath it with parking at the rear as well. And just to give you some elevations, here the building was divided into 3 smaller vertical sections to address the sloping site, and that also broke down the massing of the building. And again, you had brick elevations with metal cladding on the top, set back. And again, you had ordered elevations with windows all lining up vertically above each other. This was broken up with recessed and projecting balconies and chamfered window reveals. On the rear elevation, a similar design style with open grills and 2 exit doors on the rear. And then on the side elevations, of the vehicle entrance in a similar location to what's proposed today, but a difference was that the main entrance was to the side, to the southeast. Just show you some photos of the site. So this is the view from Harlands Road. As you can see the slope of the site, with the entrance here and Harlands House just beyond that entrance, and that is Pinfold House at the rear of the site. And then within the site, you've got the garage complex, which is part of Great Heathmead, Pinfold House, looking back towards the flats over garages, the white buildings with blank elevation to the side, facing onto the house, onto the site. And then a view of the site from Milton Road, showing the existing tree cover from both angles, and Milton House opposite the site. So the application is recommended for approval as it's a brownfield site. It's an allocated site for housing, and officers consider that it makes an efficient use of the site. The loss of the car parking spaces has been assessed as acceptable. The scheme is policy compliant in terms of its delivery of affordable housing, and the impact on neighbouring amenity is deemed acceptable. The main issues are as set out in the report. So in particular, with respect to the increased number of units, the policy in the neighbourhood plan states that the site should provide for approximately 40 dwellings. This dates from December 2016. But the district plan policy says that all applicants will be required to demonstrate that development optimises the potential of the site to accommodate development. And this is the later of the development plan policy. And this is emphasised also by the design principles DG 31 and 32 as set out in the update sheet. And the site is also identified in the design guide as an urban area with potential for change. It is considered acceptable to raise the number of units due to compliance with various policies. With respect to affordable housing, the scheme is policy compliant in terms of its provision. DP31, policy DP31 of the district plan states that proposals that do not meet the normal affordable housing requirements will be refused unless significant clear evidence demonstrates to the council's satisfaction that the site cannot support the required affordable housing from a viability and deliverability perspective. Viability should be set out in an independent viability assessment on terms agreed by the relevant parties, including the council, and funded by the developer. This is what has happened. The applicant has provided a viability report that has been assessed by an independent valuer on behalf of the council, and an off-site contribution of just over £155,000 is sought as part of the Section 106 legal agreement. As you'll see in the recommendation, the legal agreement needs to cover the infrastructure contributions and that affordable housing contribution, but within that affordable housing contribution, there needs to be a viability review mechanism, such that at the moment the work that's been carried out is on projected figures, and at a later stage the applicant will need to come back in with actual figures. So if the value of sales rises from the date of the planning permission to when the properties are sold, then there can be a clawback of the uplift in value. I should also say that at the national level, the NPPF states that it is up to the applicant to demonstrate whether particular circumstances justify the need for a viability assessment at the application stage, and that's what the applicant has chosen to do in this instance. And finally, the car parking provision, which you'll note from earlier in the presentation, the 64 units and 41 car parking spaces provided. And that has been reduced as part of the application in order to achieve some landscaping improvements throughout the site, also in agreement with the Highway Authority. So the site occupies a highly sustainable location. It's located about 175 metres walking distance from the side elevation of the railway station, about 250 metres from the main entrance of the train station, where there are also some taxi ranks. And the nearest bus stop at Sainsbury's is about 80 metres away. So for those reasons, as set out in full in the report, the application has a dual recommendation. It's recommended for permission subject to the completion of the legal agreement, but if it's not completed by the 25th of August, it's recommended it's refused for the reason as set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Andy. Right, we will now come on to the speakers. Repeat that you have 3 minutes, and I will try and indicate after 2 minutes are gone. So, first speaker, Jane Wheatley.
Okay. Thank you for letting me speak today. As a resident of this area, I do understand that obviously we do need to build certain requirements for new housing, but surely this needs to be right for the existing area and the residents of that area. And I don't feel that this build fits in with the residents of this area now. I'm at Milton House. I don't think it fits in with there. I don't think it fits in with Great Heathmead. You've shown all the designs for the building, but you haven't shown anything how it affected Great Heathmead. One whole side of that development will lose light, lose privacy to that development. I think it's too close for them. It's too high. There's too many apartments. It was passed for 40 apartments originally, and we're back here again for the second time discussing 64. It's too many, it's too high, it's too encroaching greatly on the properties in that area. It will surely affect their value of the properties. The parking comes into it again. There's 24 spaces that won't be there, so there's 41 for 64 apartments. There won't be 64 people living in those apartments. There'll be more people. So again, that pushes cars out into the surrounding areas of the side streets for people to park. I also have a concern on that road area around there. It's a one-way system. People come racing around that area now, and you'll have more cars coming out of more flats there. You've got an opportunity of another 40 cars being put into that system. So something needs to be done about that system. It's surely not going to fit. I just think the view's being taken that we'll get past for 40 and then we're going to push for 64. The way I see it as a resident, the plan was never for 40 apartments. It was always going to be for more. And I think that's just not right for that area. We don't need something in there that's going to be higher than everywhere else. It's going to encroach on everybody else. Why do we have to take the view that we're going to build something higher and just cram buildings into all these spaces that we have in Hayward Heath?
Sorry,
We
you've got
need to think of the
45
residents.
seconds, sorry.
That's just what I'd like to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the second speaker is Richard Chitty.
Mr. Chairman, before I sit down, I will just ask Mr. Watt to bring up the southwest elevation here.
Right. Okay, thanks very much. And if the same conditions apply, I'll try and indicate after 2 minutes. And after 3 minutes, please, would you wrap up in one sentence?
Sure.
And the time will start when you start speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I've asked for the diagram to be up there because I have put a few around the table, but the rear elevation of the project is actually 7 stories, as you can see. Now, this red line here indicates approximately the top floor window of the 4th floor of Pinfold House, 22 metres away. 22, maybe the bottom of your garden. Pinfold House is a 4-storey building comprised of 23 apartments, 12 of which face the proposed development. On page 21 of the planning officer's report, section 12.50 states that one of the properties most likely to be affected is Pinfold House. Then section 12.56 states that due to its size, it is acknowledged that this proposed building will have some degree of impact on the neighbouring properties, although planning officers do not consider that this will be so overbearing or result in such a significant loss of light. In regards to this statement, I would add that overbearing is often a reason for rejection of planning application on the following definitions. 1, the physical presence of a building. 2, its mass and scale. And 3, an oppressive and intrusive feeling as a result of the development. If you see what 22 metres away, I would consider that to be both overbearing and obtrusive. As to the insignificant loss of light, a survey was conducted in 2018 by GIA, Innovative Surveyors in the Right of Light. This was requested by Mr. Andy Watt, the then case officer. The survey concluded that 2 of the ground floor flats, there was a 28% loss in flat 5 and 32% loss in flat 4. The proposed height of the new development will possibly cause a loss of light to other flats and increase flats 4 and 5 to a
1 minute left.
to a far greater loss of light than previously measured. These apartments are our homes and we deserve the right to live in them and enjoy them. This project is to get your foot in the door at first with an expected 40 units only, then to reapply with a big profit of 64 units, which would be an eyesore in this already overdeveloped area. I consider the officer's report to be very biased towards acceptance to the project, which I hope is not a foregone conclusion. Also, the Town Council have made their objections clear. Hence, I would respectfully ask you not to support profitability, but take this opportunity to support your electorate and local community in shaping the future of Haywards Heath in refusing this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, so we have one speaker in favour, Darren Wood, representing the applicant. So the same would apply to you, Wood, 3 minutes, and yeah, sure. I think we've actually got the time up now, which we didn't have before.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. Your officer's report is very thorough and clear in its recommendation to approve, so I would like to underline just a few points. Frontier Estates has a good and consistent track record of working with the council to deliver high-quality schemes, and subject to your approval, we look forward to progressing this project with you also. There is a substantial need for new starter homes in Mid-Sussex, and this application contributes to meeting that need on an allocated brownfield town centre site. The site benefits from an implemented planning permission for 40 residential units. However, the viability of that scheme is challenging in the current climate. This new scheme will, we believe, is more deliverable and needed as it focuses on smaller units. The cost of delivering this site are high, and as such, we are not able to commit to delivering on-site affordable housing. However, we are happy to make the £155,000 contribution to off-site provision as agreed with your officers. The scheme will deliver more homes than originally envisaged in the neighbourhood plan allocation. However, this will contribute to viability and, as noted in your officer's report, it makes effective use of the land. We have continued to carefully consider the amenity of residents. Set-off distances between properties are more than expected minimums, and the daylight sunlight assessment has confirmed that, as with the previous approval, it will not result in any significant harm to neighbours. The scheme reflects the site's very accessible location and the proposed parking provision of 41 spaces. It is the right balance between providing for those that need to use a car and encouraging others to walk, cycle, and make use of readily available public transport. We are also providing 64 cycle parking spaces. We will be safeguarding existing mature trees at the site and planting new trees as part of the landscaping scheme, along with other biodiversity enhancements. And overall, the scheme will be of high quality, sustainable design, and as such has received support from your urban design officers and the design review panel. I therefore hope that you can endorse your officer's recommendation and approve the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Right, the final speaker is the ward councillor, Councillor Bashar. He is not restricted to 3 minutes, but we would ask him to be succinct.
First of all, I would like to thank you very much to the Chair and Alison Hammond for letting me here on a short notice. Thank you very much. My name is Abdul Bashar. I'm a district councillor of Lucaston and Bolno ward. Here I am just to give a few words. I will not take many times. Just want to be here to express my feelings because I'm a new councillor. So I don't know much about the previous of this application, but recently I have collected few information, and therefore I decided to come here and say a few words to my chambers. First of all, reason for refusal. It is overdevelopment. It has too many units on the site. 7 stories building overlooks the Great Heathmead. Secondly, I would say it's lack of car parking spaces. One car parking space for flat in an area where there is already shortages of spaces for car parking. I agree with the points previously made by the Hayward Town Council. Now, as I understand, there is no social housing, and the council has been offered 155,000, which is this day on earth, it's enough. So I understand, which is not to be possible. I mean, giving 155,000 to our council for this, and it's many more flats. It's now 64. No reason to overturn the previous decisions based on number of 40 properties, but not number 64. So I would like to, say my word. I will finish it off now. I will ask and request to the chamber to rethink again, reconsider our neighbourhood, especially the building at the Great Heathmead. We have the residents there, been living for many years, and we want to, of course, we want to keep our heritage town, but possibly if we can do it as all we can live together with a nice environment, not having a complaint to others, and we can live in a property where we can, over the years, that we can sell and live it as like our own home. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Angie, are there any of those points you would like to respond to at this stage before we move on to the members? I mean, I think it is worth repeating that many councillors, I suspect, are disappointed at the contribution towards the affordable homes, but, as has been explained, there is an assessment system which has been gone through, and I think because of the small nature of the apartments, they may not achieve the sort of sales figure that we anticipated on other flats in the area, and this is why there isn't the profit on the system on this development that we might have anticipated. But that will be reviewed after 75% of the dwellings are occupied, and if it proves that there is further profit on the site, then the council, my understanding is that we will receive 60% of that additional profit. Are there any other points you wanted to speak to at this stage, or can I go to members?
I can wait for members' questions.
Okay, fine, thank you. Right, I'll open the floor to members. Would any members wish to speak? I will go to Councillor Bates, as I think you're the only Hayward Heath councillor on the committee.
Thank you, Mr.
First.
Chairman. Well, I like the idea of having housing on the site, but it seems too much. But really, we haven't delved into the issue of the contribution we're getting. Now, I thought the presentation made by the applicant was good. It brought out an issue that we haven't really looked at or understood, is they are small flats and the cost of them. But is there any link between them selling the houses and the council's housing as a housing provider of affordable homes? Can we correlate the two things? And we're getting more properties, and one would say they were affordable. But is there any issue with the council having an opt-in on who goes there? I will not talk about the design aspect of it, because I think this point is more important.
Well, I wouldn't have thought that the council has got any say on who moves in there, as it is a commercial development. But the point has been made that if there are profits in excess of what was anticipated, the council will get a greater contribution towards the affordable housing. But in terms of would we have any control over the residents, I would say the answer is absolutely not.
Can I add a few comments?
Please.
Thank you very much. The committee report at paragraphs 1296 onwards talk about housing mix. And the housing mix is 48 one-beds and 16 two-beds. And our housing officer considers that that mix is in conformity with the mix that we're looking for within the district and therefore is in conformity with policy DP30 of the plan. In terms of affordable housing, yes, we've already discussed there will be a contribution to off-site affordable housing of actually over 155. The viability mechanism has been extensively deployed. We have a supplementary planning document which sets out our process. The applicant did submit as part of the application an assessment using a standard assessment model, Argus developer model, and that assessment has independently been reviewed by the council's viability assessors, Dixon Searle Partnership. Dixon Searle's findings confirm that largely they confirm the process and the methodology. There are a number of differences in terms of estimated build costs. The build costs are estimated to have gone up. The profits have gone up a little bit, and they've also questioned the abnormals and removed a substation. And that's why Dixon Searle Partnership felt that there would be a surplus of 155,458, and that is the amount that's included or will be included in the Section 106 agreement. So I think members of this committee can be satisfied that the due process has been followed in terms of looking at the assessment, the viability assessment. As a result of that viability assessment and the independent review by our assessors, we have identified a potential surplus. The applicant has agreed to that being made as an off-site contribution, but has also agreed to the viability review clause being introduced within the Section 106. And that gives us an opportunity to sense check at the 75th percent of development the actual costs against what we've got at the moment, which are estimated build costs and estimated sales value. If there is additional profit identified, then there is a clawback mechanism, as the Chair's already agreed. So I think in terms of housing mix, Councillor Bates, that the housing mix is appropriate. The affordable housing accords with our viability process, which is set out in our SPD. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Avery. Hold on, it needs to go red. There we are.
It's gone red, yeah. Thank you. There seems to be two issues here. One is the car parking and losing the car park that was Harlan's car park, which feeds the whole town. And then the issue of the Section 106 payments. Now, we've had view of the FAST report and the MSDC viability report, which Sally's just gone through. And that seems to have gone through a very, very clear set of circumstances in real terms, in terms of the build costs against the value of the development, and that seems all clear to me. I do have concerns regarding the parking, having used the car park for 15 years, but in speaking to Andrew Watts, he assures me that the highways have assured him that the impact on the surrounding town will be more than offset by the new station car park and other car parking elsewhere. So on that basis, we'll hear Andy's response. So going on to the development itself, it provides 48 single bedroom apartments and the rest as two bedroom. There is a real and proper need among young people for accommodation of this kind. I'm the father of two millennials myself, and finding places to live is becoming virtually impossible. It's situated, you know, Haywards Heath is at the end of the day largely based on a commuter town, and essentially it's got the station next door, it's got the supermarket and services and bus stops and everything you could need. The P-tile rating of the whole thing is fantastic. So overall, it's a balance of impact of the size of the thing against the benefits of it. And my view is the benefits outweigh the impact. So going back to the car park, we'll take Andy's view on that, but I will generally be supporting the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackson.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Looking at this particular development, it's important, of course, that we maximise the capacity of any site in terms of the number of units we provide on that site. Although it looks a large block, if you look at the neighbouring buildings, some of those others are quite substantial blocks of flats as well. So it's not in keeping with probably the buildings in its immediate vicinity. Secondly, of course, the argument is on car parking, but bearing in mind they're so close to the station, Sainsbury's, the secondary school, well, no, it's a sixth form college, and also, of course, bus stops and things, that probably the need for a car is probably less than possibly if it's a more out-of-town development. And thirdly, on the viability, I looked at the viability report. Everything's very, very volatile at the moment. The cost of building materials, the cost of labour. It's very, very difficult to predict how much that's going to be. The selling price, well, although there was a great demand for lower cost market properties, again, they've made a reasonable guess at what the selling price might be. And therefore, I think it's very, very important that we put into one of the conditions that once a certain number of houses have been sold, we reassess the viability. And if the profit margins have become substantially increased, then a great amount of money should go towards the housing, affordable housing sort of requirement.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very much in favour of density and brownfield sites like this. It's really good, but I think there is a limit. I get what Councillor Avery is saying about the need for one-bedroom starter homes, but I do feel that this is crammed into the site, and I have great sympathy for the Pinfold residents, who I think will be overlooked. We have to optimise potential for development, but I think 40 flats would be better than 64. I'm concerned about the viability assessment and glad that there will be a review later on. It seems to me as well that the developer's profit doesn't have to be 20, it can be in the range of 15 to 20%. So there is a margin there for discussing that. And if it was 17.5%, says the housing officer, it would lead to a contribution of £524,000. So there is a margin there for discussion. Nobody ever mentions car clubs, ever seems to think about them. They're never on the agenda. I don't know why. But my question to Mr. Watts is the trees. We've heard from the tree officer there's little room here for trees to survive along the front. They'll be in pits. Will they ever actually get to maturity? There's no detail on how many replacement trees will replace the 14 trees and 3 groups that we're losing. So do you have any numbers on the tree replacement? And I come back to my old chestnut, Swift bricks. Are there any integral Swift bricks? Because Mr. Wood did mention other biodiversity provision, but I don't know what he meant by that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to come back at this stage,
Yes.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So I'll just talk about the trees. As said in the presentation, the trees are being removed on the Harlands Road frontage, but they have been salvaged on the Milton Road frontage as part of the negotiations of the application. So you're losing 7 trees along the frontage, with sort of 3 rowans, 3 cherries, a Norway maple and various trees, and they are all category C trees or a category U tree. So just to explain that to members, category C trees are trees of low quality with an estimated remaining life expectancy of at least 10 years, or young trees with a stem diameter below 150 millimetres. And category U is trees in such a condition that they cannot realistically be retained as living trees in the context of the current land use for more than 10 years. So they are not protected trees. We wouldn't really consider that we could retain those trees in order to prevent a development in this particular instance. There are several landscaping enhancements that have been provided as part of the amendment to the scheme, and you'll see that on the plan that I showed you on the landscaping on the ground floor level. So we'll have sort of some flowers sort of in this area, structural planting with some trees provided to break up the car parking at the rear, and then in the more public areas of the site, some tree pits with the trees. Now, it is acknowledged that the council's tree officer doesn't think that the species being proposed will be realistic in those locations in a tree pit, but that would be subject to a condition of a planning permission in any case, seeking further detail. In terms of the internal integral Swift bricks, there's nothing shown on the plan at the moment, but there is a general biodiversity enhancement condition, which is condition 12 on page 46, which sort of requires no development to commence until some enhancement has been carried out or proposed on the site. And obviously, as you know, from looking at the site, the majority of it is laid to hard standing. So, you know, it's really just the trees that are in place, and we do have a better scheme than was actually proposed when the application was submitted by the retention of the trees to the northwest and to Milton Road in particular. Do you want me also just to respond to the loss of the car park?
Please.
As well, yes, to Councillor Avery's point. When the planning application was previously considered, it was accompanied by a report that dealt with the loss of the car parking spaces on the site. And it was noted that if there would be sufficient capacity at weekends, but the only time when there would not be capacity would be for a 1 hour period during a typical weekday, and that was 1 car. So that was just absolutely negligible in highway safety terms, that it would result in an unacceptable displacement of parking in the surrounding area. Now, as everyone will know, this application has now been submitted after COVID has changed the world, and the capacity of the car park is not as it was pre-COVID. If the loss of the car park was considered acceptable before COVID, then with negligible impact on the displacement in the surrounding area, then it would be extremely difficult to raise that as an argument this time round. And as I said on site to the members on the visit, it's a private car park and it could be unilaterally closed at any point. The council would have no control over that. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Chairman. I am supportive of the development. I think it's a good use of a brownfield site that's well located for current services and public transport. As I mentioned on the site visits, I think the Section 106 contribution, it feels inadequate when you make an estimated enterprise value of the development, and notwithstanding the report we've had since then on the overage. My question is more technical and to the senior officers. If when 75% of the properties are sold and the developer can make an estimated final account and an assessment for the officers to review, how will we as councillors be able to see that? Is that something that is available to us? I'm only asking because I say I've not been through this process before. Thank you.
It will be submitted to your officer team. We will conduct an independent audit of that in the way that we did the original submission. It won't have to come back to this committee if that's what you're asking. We as officers will have delegated authority to determine the next steps with that. If there is an uplift, we will then work with our legal team in terms of securing that clawback, that uplift in value.
And will we see that uplift? How would we, as councillors, get to see what the uplift would be?
It will be in the public domain because we'll put the documents on our planning portal. And Paula may be able to advise in terms of the wording of the actual legal agreement, which she's got right here.
The legal agreement, it provides, so you've got the review at 75% of sales, and then if there is a surplus, that surplus, and the surplus goes up to around the £1 million mark, if that would be the value of policy compliant 30% affordable housing on the site, so it's up to £1 million. Subject to the profit share of 60-40, which is standard, and that would be paid, so if there is a surplus, it would be paid in full to the District Council before the completion or the sale or letting of the 49th dwelling. So legally, they are required to pay any surplus that comes through the review mechanism before they can sell or let more than 49 dwellings.
Thank you. I understand it was just that we can see the overage and where it actually lands. That was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bates.
I just wanted to come back on the point that Councillor Eaves was talking about. She regularly mentions car clubs, and I think that's an excellent idea, and particularly this scheme here with such a shortfall of car parking spaces on the site to the properties. This should be a condition and looked into, and the whole car club issue should be looked at by the District Council anyway. So I would like to see some form of condition made to this approval, if it's given, that the applicant looks at a car club scheme based upon a demand by the residents, because obviously 1/3 are not going to have a car on site.
There is actually in there, as part of condition 26 of the travel plan, that will be looked at. Yes. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I too am very disappointed with the lack of affordable housing, albeit the 155k contribution. I think that's fairly unanimous. You know, this district council has a proud policy of 30% affordable housing that is known to all applicants on all schemes of all sizes. So, quite why we find ourselves in a situation with this application when there are no obvious abnormals on the site. Usually there are obvious abnormals when there's a lack of affordable housing. So it rankles a lot with me, and you know, not happy with that. But also with the review mechanism or known to developers as toolkits, there's also the land value. You know, have applicants overpaid for the land? So that should come into a residual valuation assessment. Anyway, notwithstanding that, we also have a double whammy because I think the infrastructure contributions under £5,000 a plot look light to me as well. But notwithstanding those comments, in overall terms, I'm supportive of the application.
Yes, I'd say the only comment I would make, and like you, I'm disappointed with the level of contribution, is the fact the mitigating thing is that they are apparently smaller units than normal, and that seems to be the main reason for it. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak? Right, if no one else wishes to speak and there's no other motions, I will move to the recommendation, and for the benefit of people watching, I will read the recommendation out in full. Yeah. The recommendation, I'll ask for a proposer after I've read the recommendation. It's recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions listed in Appendix A and the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure the required infrastructure contributions and the necessary affordable housing contributions and the viability review mechanisms. Recommendation B, if a satisfactory planning application has not been completed by the 25th of August 2023, it's recommended. Is that right? Correct, sorry. Should that be 25th of August?
Yeah, we think we can achieve that. That's
Okay.
fine.
The 25th of August, it is recommended that the application be refused at the discretion of the Assistant Director for Planning and Sustainable Economy, and for the following reasons. The proposal fails to provide the required affordable housing contributions, the viability review mechanism or the infrastructure contributions. The application therefore conflicts with policy DP 20 and 31 of the Mid-Sussex District Plan and the Mid-Sussex Supplementary Planning Documents, Development Viability, Affordable Housing and Development Infrastructure and Contributions. Do I have a proposer, please?
Councillor Avery.
Councillor Avery, thank you. And a seconder?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Right, the Vice Chairman seconds it. Can we now move to the votes, please? Can members please indicate on their panels? Nine. Okay, the vote is now closed. There are 7 in favour, 2 against, so the recommendation is passed. Thank you very much. Right, okay. Right. There'll just be a short pause while we change planning officers. Sorry?
Only got one speaker for.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, hopefully this will go through fairly quickly.
Oh, should be. But not really. The only reason why I did this because the wellness centre's there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So maybe ask them if they will need to discuss it after the presentation.
Oh, yeah, I will.
It's up to you.
Yeah. sit down. Okay. Right, we now move on to DM 23 1051, the Farmers Stores, Gatehouse Lane, Goddards Green, West Sussex. I'll ask Susan Dudley to make a presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning permission for a mixed-use commercial park to include a wellness centre, which comes under Class ED, which is indoor sports, recreational fitness, and 19 units for classes EG, which is business light industrial, B2 general industry, and B8 storage and distribution. The site is located on the south side of Gatehouse Lane with a long access drive leading to the site, which is currently occupied by about 11 industrial buildings with a variety of uses, including car repairs, servicing, storage and light manufacturing. And towards the southern end of the site, there is open storage and a salvage yard. To the east of Gatehouse Lane, there are two residential properties, one of which has a garden that runs the length of the access drive and adjoins the site to the northern boundary. To the west is open land, and beyond this there is a residential property fronting Gatehouse Lane, and to the south there is woodland. The site is located in the countryside and is allocated as an existing employment site in the site allocations DPD. This just shows an aerial view of the site, and you can see the long access drive, the existing industrial units and the residential properties up front Gatehouse Lane. So this slide shows the proposed layout of the site, with the entrance and the access drive to be widened to allow two vehicles to pass and includes a pedestrian footpath. The application proposes a complete redevelopment of the site with the 19 industrial units and a wellness centre. So this shows the site in greater detail. So you can see the wellness centre would be located in the northern section of the site to the west of the access road. Then you would have 5 units arranged as a terrace with 3 units facing those with a courtyard of parking. To the south of this, there would be a group of 4 units with a parking area between those. And then along the eastern boundary, there would be 6 units, units 13 to 18, forming a terrace. And then finally, the largest unit would be located in the southern section of the site, and that would be some 600 square metres. The roof forms would be a mix of pitched and flat roofs, and all the roofs would have solar panels, with units 9 to 18 having flat roofs, and they would have the green roofs also. The landscaping includes, as they say, new access drive with trees along there, and then there will be reinforcement of the planting along the boundary with new trees and planting. This slide just shows the access in greater detail, so you can see where the access would be widened to allow 2 vehicles to pass with a 2-metre pedestrian pathway. So turning now to the elevations, the design of the units would be contemporary and reflects the industrial use proposed. The commercial units would all have roller shutter doors on the front and a pedestrian access, and the materials would be a mix of aluminium and timber cladding with powder-coated window frames. The heights of the units would vary from 6.2 metres in height to 7.4. I'll just quickly run through the other units. So this would be units 6 to 8, which have the pitched roofs, and then unit 9 and 10 with the flat roofs, and that they would have the green roof. And again, units 11 and 12, they would have the flat roof with solar panels and a green roof. Units 13 to 18, which would run along the eastern boundary. And then you have unit 19, the largest of the units. Finally, we have the Wellness Centre, which would have a pitched roof with solar panels and use the same palette of materials as the industrial units, but would have large areas of glazing and also would have an open area at the end, which we use for outdoor yoga and Pilates classes. This just shows the floor plan of the Wellness Centre. On the ground floor, there would be a shop and cafe, yoga studios and Pilates, and the outdoor area, and also a terraced area. Then on the upper floor, you would have male and female changing areas with a sauna, 2 therapy rooms, and a gym. But this just shows a street scene looking east towards the units that would be along the eastern boundary, and that's the largest unit, Unit 19. And this will be looking west with Unit 19, and you have the Wellness Centre located close to the entrance. So this is just some photographs so you can get a feel of the site at the moment. This is the access from Gatehouse Lane. You can see it's just a single track into the site. And then this is a view looking up towards the industrial units. And this is taken from within the site looking towards the access, and you can see the uneven road surface and the very dated industrial units. And again, that shows the units and the out-of-date features that they have there. So the recommendation, as I say, is for approval. And as set out in the office report, the site is identified as an existing employment site in the site allocations DPD for use classes EG, B2 and B8. And policy SA34 supports the expansion of existing employment sites for these uses. All of the 19 industrial units would be for use classes EG, B2 and B8, and therefore would comply with policy CA34, also making efficient use of the existing employment land with a 995 square metre net increase in floor space. The proposed wellness centre, however, would fall outside of these classes, being a different use class ED, which is indoor sports, recreation or fitness, and therefore would not be supported by SA34. The Wellness Centre is within the NPPF definition of a main town centre use, for which a sequential test would normally be required. However, following the submission of further information by the applicant, it is considered by officers that the Wellness Centre would operate as an integral ancillary element of the development and would be used by occupiers of the industrial units as well as for the general public, and the sequential test would not apply. It's noted that the design of the centre would also lend itself to the conversion to industrial use should the leisure use cease in the future. Therefore, it's considered that this aspect of the proposals can be supported. The design, layout and scale is also considered acceptable and would not cause harm to the character and appearance of the area or countryside. It's not considered to cause significant harm to the neighbouring amenity, and there'd be a neutral impact in respect of highway safety and drainage. Therefore, as set out in the officer's report, the recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you. That ends the presentation.
Thank you, Sue. Normally, this development would have been left to an officer's decision. The only real issue, and the reason it's coming for us today, is the wellness centre on the site. We have got one speaker, Sarah Sheath, as from the agent. So, as explained before, you do have 3 minutes. I will try and indicate when there's 1 minute left. I would ask you to wrap up after 3 minutes and 1 sentence, please. And time starts when you start speaking.
I'm here today speaking on behalf of the applicant, who unfortunately is unable to attend today's meeting owing to a family annual leave, but who would like to express his thanks to all of those who have been involved in the consideration of these proposals. As you will see, there are no objections from any third parties or statutory consultees, and we are also delighted to have the full support of the Parish Council, the local ward member, and of course, your professional officers. The proposals will make significant improvements to an existing employment site, not only by providing additional commercial floor space, but also in terms of visual, highway safety and environmental improvements. As your officers have set out, the existing site is in a poor condition. The existing buildings are old and run down. Access to the site is via a single width pothole driveway, and parking across the site is ad hoc at best. The proposals seek the demolition of all of the existing buildings and their replacement with new, modern, fit-for-purpose, sustainable, mixed-use units that will significantly improve the visual appearance of the site as well as its economic viability. The proposals will deliver high-quality, flexible commercial units which will be much more attractive to existing and new businesses. The proposed wellness centre has been designed as an entirely complementary, integral but subordinate element of the overall redevelopment of the site to be operated as a business hub as opposed to a strict leisure facility. It's proposed that the wellness centre facilities will be made available for use by occupiers of the commercial units as well as the general public, therefore offering an enhanced working environment. Its inclusion as part of the overall scheme will reduce the need for site employees to travel off-site during working hours, thus reducing trips to and from the site. The proposals will see the existing access to the site upgraded, widened, and a dedicated pavement into the site is to be provided. This is a significant improvement upon the existing situation where vehicles, pedestrians and cyclists all have to compete to use the existing single-track driveway into the site. The comprehensive redevelopment of the site facilities facilitates the ability to deliver the new buildings with a unifying contemporary design approach, providing a high-quality, consistent appearance across the site. Access and parking with the site is provided in line with the council's standards, and soft landscaping and biodiversity improvements are also secured. In line with the specific requests of the parish council, the scheme has been designed to secure the retention and enhancement of existing boundary vegetation to soften and screen views of the site from the wider area. The district plan seeks to support the promotion of economic growth and vitality even in the district, and to this end includes policies which allow for the intensification and redevelopment of existing employment sites. The proposals will make much more efficient use of an existing brownfield site in close proximity to existing areas of significant residential and commercial growth. The council is committed to supporting sustainable economic growth and wants to attract businesses to the district, as well as ensuring existing businesses have sufficient and appropriate space to grow. These proposals deliver exactly this. It is respectfully requested that you support your officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Right. Now, as I said, members, it is only before us because of the wellness centre. So, do any members wish to speak? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a member of Hurstpur Point and Sayers Common Parish Council, but not a member of their planning committee, and therefore have not expressed any opinion on this particular site, and therefore I didn't declare an interest at the beginning of the meeting. I think I'm correct in doing that. Looking at this site, I've known it for many, many years, having lived in Hurstpur Point for 50-odd years. It is a site which was confirmed when we visited last Monday. A lot of ramshackle buildings, old and dilapidated, some of them, lots of rubbish and stuff on the site. It looks a bit of a mess. And I think this particular development will not only provide good quality employment opportunity space, but also will clear up what is in fact a very untidy site. And I'm also interested in the wellness centre, and if it doesn't become viable as a wellness centre, it can be reconstructed or altered to make into employment space. So I think all those are positive for this particular development, and I'm prepared to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Very quickly, saying I was most surprised by the state of the site when we arrived. This is going to be a great improvement. The wellness centre, very interesting. I think there's a lot of people taking this up now. I think we all ought to get down to our yoga. I'm looking forward to my session tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I welcome this development. I'd just like to say how nice it is to see air source heat pumps, solar panels and green roofs, and it's very reachable by bike from Burgess Hill, so I'm delighted at the 40 cycle spaces. My only tiny quibble would be that the EVCPs, there are only 22 charging points. There are 27, I calculate, would be passively connected. That makes less than half. Could we condition it to say all of them have to be, 22 active ones and the rest have to be passive? Is that reasonable? Thank you.
You'd like to comment?
Only just to say that there are 136 spaces, 22 active, but there would be a further 20% provided as passive space to accommodate future demand.
Which is 27.
Are there any other members wish to speak?
Recommend approval, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, do I have a seconder? Councillor Bates, thank you. Right, move to the recommendation. It's recommended that planning permission is approved subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. Can we move to the vote, please? Right, the vote is now closed. 9 in favour, so that is unanimous that recommendation is approved. As I anticipate the third item is going to be fairly lengthy, I would suggest that we take a short recess for members' convenience and we reconvene at 25 to 4, please. public by Ian Gledhill from West Sussex County Council, who will be advising us on traffic issues that may arise. Welcome here. Right, so we're moving on to DM 22-2272, land at Hurst Farm, Hurstwood Lane, Haywards Heath. The presentation will be made by Stephen King.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Before I start going through the presentation, I'll just draw your attention to the update sheet. Additional representations that are set out on the update sheet. Change to the date in the recommendation B to the 10th of November, which is 3 months from now. An amendment to part of the description of the school within the report. Deletion of condition 26, so that's a duplication of condition 23. Revision to condition 15 regarding archaeology, so that ties in with potential phasing of the development, and then some additional conditions to do with archaeology, digital infrastructure, which has been referred to in the committee report, and the residential travel plan. Okay. So the planning application before committee today is at Hurst Farm, Hurstwood Lane, Haywards Heath. It's an outline planning application that seeks consent for the erection of up to 375 dwellings, 2 form-entry primary school, aerial ground allotments, open space and associated infrastructure. The application is seeking consent for the principle of the development and the means of access into the site. So the plan before you now is a location plan that shows the site and surrounds. That's all described in section 9 of the committee report. But the site, it's outlined in red on the plan here. It's approximately 33 hectares, and it's on the southeastern side of Haywards Heath, to the south of the Relief Road, which is called Rocky Lane, which is this road here where the cursor is. So the land on the western side is bounded by the Relief Road. There's a general fall in levels through the site from north down to the south. The northern parts of the site, there's various changes in levels with a fall from the north to the south again, but also a fall in levels from the east down to the west into the site. The northern tip of the site is marked by the road junction there, the top of Hurstwood Lane. At the southern end of the site, the boundary is marked by the rear gardens of the properties that front onto Hurstwood Lane. And on the western side, you've got a number of properties on Hurstwood Lane, on Fox Hill, that back onto the site. This is Hurstwood Lane that runs through the centre of the site down here, and then the eastern parcel of the site is partially within Lewes District Council, and the boundary, as we saw on the site visit, isn't demarcated by any physical features on the ground. It is just a grassed field across here. The land gradually falls away from north to south on this parcel, and then you've got the residential properties that bound the site to the north. Then the land falls away gradually to the east. In terms of the planning policy background, I'll come to that in the next few slides. And just in terms of an update, the planning application submitted to Lewes District Council, there was a duplicate application, went to their planning committee yesterday, where they resolved to approve the application subject to the completion of a satisfactory legal agreement. So that was done yesterday. So in terms of the planning policy background, this is an extract from the neighbourhood plan. It's a little bit fuzzy, but the next plan's a bit clearer. But it does show that the majority of the site is allocated for residential development in the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan for approximately 350 dwellings. So that's this area here to the west of Hurstwood Lane, outlined in red. The neighbourhood plan also allocates land on the east side of Hurstwood Lane for burial ground and allotments, and that's this area hatched in yellow there. And then to the south, you've got an area that's allocated for open space, but that falls outside of the site of this planning application. So the extract from the district plan it's the same information, but just a little bit clearer. So again, this is the allocated land in the pink there, allocated for residential development. This is the area that's allocated for the burial ground and allotments. This area in the blue allocated for open space. As I say, that is outside of the site of this planning application. And then this area of land to the north is classed as being in the countryside in the district plan, so not allocated for development. And again, this shows the boundary that runs the county boundary. So the other side of the black line, you're into Lewes district. It's also worth highlighting, and I'll come back to this, that at the end of Greenhill Way, there's a substantial amount of relatively new development that's been permitted by Lewes District Council, fairly recently completed and occupied. So that's all new development, just outside the district boundary, but clearly a part of Haywards Heath. This plan just shows some of the constraints that are in and around the site. So the dark cross-hatched area denotes ancient woodland. So this is a finger of ancient woodland that runs alongside the east side of Hurstwood Lane, and I'll come back to that later in the presentation. They've got ancient woodland here on the Lewes side of the boundary, Silent Wood. And up here, you've got Anscombe Wood, which is ancient woodland, that then extends down here. As you can see, there is obviously the Relief Road and new residential development on land that is still classified as ancient woodland, and that dates back to the development of the Relief Road and the residential properties here, where soils were translocated and moved down to this area here to facilitate that residential development. That was done some time ago, but it still shows on Natural England's map that is ancient woodland, although it's clearly a housing estate and the Relief Road. The red blocks there denote the listed buildings and heritage assets that are in or adjacent to the site. You've got Middlefield Cottage here off Fox Hill, a Grade 2 listed building. Hurst Barn there, Grade 2 listed building. And then Hurst House, Grade 2 star listed building. So in terms of the planning history of the site, that's set out in section 8 of the committee report. So you see the local planning authority did resolve to grant planning permission for development of up to 375 homes, the 2 Formentary Primary School, burial ground allotments and country open park back in August 2018. And this is the previous illustrative layout. Principal difference between what was resolved to be approved then and what is before committee now is the location of the school. That was proposed to be up here in this northeastern parcel of the site, whereas as we'll see as we come on to the next few slides, this school is now proposed to be located in the southwestern corner of the site with residential development up here. And there's two main reasons for that change that's come about after extensive consultation and work from the applicants. Firstly, it's felt that that's a more suitable site in terms of transport and access for the school. And the second point relates to the ancient woodland, which I referred to in the previous site, in that there was proposed to be an access through this ancient woodland direct to the site. But because of the enhanced status that ancient woodland now has under national planning policy, it's no longer felt that that would be appropriate and wouldn't meet the exceptional tests that are set out in national policy. But as I say, this is what was resolved to be approved, subject to a legal agreement being completed. That legal agreement wasn't completed, and this application was eventually withdrawn back in 2021. And so in terms of what's proposed now, the details are all set out in section 10 of the committee report. So as I say, the application is seeking outline consent for the principle of the development and the means of access into the site. The application is accompanied by a number of parameter plans, and I'll go through some of those that show the parameters under which the site would be developed. So when the reserve matters come forward, those reserve matters will need to be in conformity with the parameter plan. So, for example, at the reserve matter stage, the school will need to be in this area. The residential parcels will need to be as set out. The burial ground and allotments will need to be in these locations with the open space to the east of the site. So this plan shows the proposed density of the residential development. The residential parcels are divided into 4 separate parcels, each with their own individual access. So parcel 1 at the northern end of the site, approximately 59 units in that parcel, accessed from Hurstwood Lane at this point here. Parcel 2 down here in the centre, approximately 94 units, accessed from Hurstwood Lane at this point here. Parcel 3 down here, approximately 146 units, and accessed from Hurstwood Lane. The school will have its own separate access, again from Hurstwood Lane at the bottom. And then parcel 4 would be on the eastern side of Hurstwood Lane. That's approximately 76 units, accessed from this point on Hurstwood Lane. Burial ground and allotments and country open park also accessed from here. A section of Hurstwood Lane would be closed to vehicular traffic from this point down to this point here, so you wouldn't be able to go all the way down, so it'd be closed through traffic, and that is a policy requirement of the allocation in the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan. This is just a illustrative layout to show how those parcels could be laid out. So it is purely illustrative, but it does show a possible way that the residential units could be accommodated on that site. And again, I think it's worth pointing out the relatively new residential development that's been permitted by Lewes District Council at the end of Greenhill Way. So this is a plan that shows how the internal roads could be laid out within the site, perimeter block layout, which is a fairly standard and sound method of organising residential development. But the actual access points onto Hurstwood Lane would be fixed, so there would be at these points. So I'll go through the details of those in subsequent slides, but the access points would be fixed onto Hurstwood Lane as they're shown here. And this just shows non-vehicular access within the site. The site does propose, or application does propose, a pedestrian cycle link from the parcel 3 through here, and then utilising an existing access track that runs parallel to the relief road. That would then come out near to the roundabout, where there would be a new signalised junction. But again, I'll come on to that. So in terms of highway works related to the application, this is the top northern end of Hurstwood Lane where it joins the relief road, and it's proposed that this junction would be signalised as part of the planning application with an area for pedestrians to cross as part of the phasing of that junction. Access into parcel 1 would be a simple T-junction into that northern residential parcel. A pedestrian access also at the far northern end of the site. For parcel 2, Hurstwood Lane would be diverted into the site, and then north of Hurstwood Lane, that's the section that will be closed off to vehicular traffic. For parcel 4, Hurstwood Lane would be redirected, so you turn eastwards into the site, and then the existing access that serves the business centre and the 4 residential properties, including the 2 listed properties I referred to earlier, that would become a T-junction, and beyond that point, that's where the Hurstwood Lane would be closed again, so that's the other end. So you'd have that section of Hurstwood Lane closed to vehicular traffic. At the far southern end, dedicated access to the school, that would be a simple T-junction again. And then access to parcel 3, another T-junction just to the north of Colwell Lane. At the bottom end of Hurstwood Lane, so the southern end, there would be a new pavement provided up to the access point to the school, and then up to the next access point into parcel 3. And that involves slight narrowing of the carriageway at places down to 4.8 metres, but there would be a footway provided on the western side. In terms of off-site works, this is a proposed signalised crossing at the top end of Rocky Lane and the Lewes Road, so that's the Lewes Road roundabout, and the next roundabout provides access into the Princess Royal Hospital. So it's proposed to have a signalised junction at that point there. At the other end of the Relief Road, with the roundabout with Fox Hill, there's also proposed to be a signalised junction. So that would link up with the pedestrian cycle route that I referred to earlier, which runs parallel to the A272, and then would come at this point, allow you to cross and then access the town centre from there. And it's also proposed to have a new puffing crossing on Fox Hill, pretty much opposite Mermaid Cottage, that would provide pedestrian access into the western side of the site. So the Hurstwood Lane junction is just off the plan there. And we'll come on to this later in the presentation, but this just shows the Fox Hill Hurstwood Lane junction, and as you can see, as well as the Fox Hill Hurstwood Lane junction, which is a T junction, there's also a private access drive here that accesses onto Fox Hill, and you've also got an access point for the car park for the public house, and that's one of the practical difficulties of signalising that junction, that it's not possible to have uncontrolled private access points into a signalised junction, but we can come on to that later in the presentation. And just some photos of the site. So these are at the bottom end, southern end of Hurstwood Lane. So this is from the car park, the public house opposite, looking up towards Hurstwood Lane, and that's looking further up. So footpath will be provided on that western side of Hurstwood Lane. These are views within the site on the parcel 3. So as you can see, field laid to grass, falling levels down from essentially north to south. You can also see the power lines that run through the site that would need to be undergrounded as part of the application. This shows the closest property on the western side of the site, so any future reserve matter application would need to address the proximity of that property. That's relatively recently constructed and is quite close to the western boundary of the site. These are photos at the northern end of Hurstwood Lane. So this is taken from the Relief Road looking towards Hurstwood Lane. And you can see the works that have been done already to the carriageway there, an extra widening there, a left and a right turn. That's associated with the development of the houses that were approved in Lewes at the end of Greenhill Way. So that work was associated with that. That's just a view looking from the Relief Road across the site. So that the backdrop here, that's the parcel 1 there, and this is looking further up Hurstwood Lane towards the Greenhill Way development beyond. These are within the site, so this is the access road that goes on to provide access to the business park, and this is the Grade 2 star listed building I referred to earlier, and this is from within the business park looking back to that listed building. These are views looking northwards along Hurstwood Lane, so just to the left there, that's the access into the business park, and the access into parcel 4 would be coming in at this point. So this is where the junction would be realigned. And these are just some photos of the eastern parcel of the site. Again, it's just a field laid to grass with housing development at the northern end, and That's a view looking the other way, looking down to the south, so a gradual fall in levels to the south. And again, views of the eastern parcel of the site. So this is looking eastwards on the eastern side, so that again the land gradually falls away. So if I go back to the parameter plans. In terms of the application itself and how it should be approached and the legal framework, that's set out in the committee report. And as members will know, planning application should be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material planning considerations indicate otherwise. So that's all in section 11 of the committee report. In this part of the district, the development plan comprises the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan, the district plan, the site allocations, DPD. The MPPF isn't part of the development plan, but is an important planning consideration as it's national guidance from the government on how the planning system should operate. So that's always an important material planning consideration. In terms of the assessment of the application, that's dealt with in section 12 of the report. The report is quite lengthy, so I will just highlight some of the main issues rather than go through everything that's in the report. In terms of the principle of the development, that's dealt with on page or paragraph 12.2 onwards, and as we saw from the slides, the majority of the site is allocated for development in the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan and the district plan, i.e. the area all to the west of Hurstwood Lane. However, as the report acknowledges, there isn't full conformity with the development plan because of the proposed housing on the east side of Hurstwood Lane. So you can see that's on land that is classified as being in the countryside under in the district plan, and therefore there is a departure from the development plan in respect of that element of the development. As is set out in the report, a principal aim of policy DP12 in the district plan is to maintain, or where possible enhance, the quality of the rural and landscape character of the district, and therefore an important issue in assessing the application as a whole is the landscape impact of the development, and that's dealt with in paragraphs 12.39 to 12.50 in the report. And you'll see from the report that overall it's your officer's view that the impact on the wider landscape will be acceptable. Whilst there will clearly be a significant change at the local level, the new housing will be seen against the backdrop of existing housing to the north and won't represent a wider incursion into the countryside because of the housing that extends much further eastwards and across here into Lewes. It's also, I think, worth noting that the country open park, which would be gifted to the town council, will then provide a permanent area of open space, which provides a sort of permanent buffer and soft edge to Haywards Heath. And again, I think it's also worth noting that the area of open space that would be provided as part of the application is extensive, and the allocation in the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan of open space here is unaffected by the planning application because it lies outside of the site. So those are clear benefits of the scheme. In terms of heritage assets, that is dealt with on paragraph 12.10 of the report. As I said, Hurst House, Grade 2 star listed building, and Hurst Barn and Middlefield Cottage on Fox Hill, both Grade 2 listed buildings. As it's set out in the committee report, officers do consider that there would be some harm to the setting of those listed buildings, And in terms of the MPPF, that would be classified as less than substantial. As has been set out in the report, case laws confirm that a finding of less than substantial harm has to be given significant weight as a material planning consideration. And where you do have such harm, the MPPF requires a balancing exercise between that less than substantial harm and the public benefits of the proposal. Now that balance is undertaken in paras 12.29 and 12.30 of the report, and it's your office's view that the public benefits of the proposal, i.e. new housing, the vast majority of which is on an allocated site, the primary school, burial ground allotments, the economic benefits associated with the development all outweigh that harm to the setting of those listed buildings. And I think it's also worth pointing out that it's an inevitable consequence of this land being allocated for residential development in the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan, that there would be an impact on the setting of these listed buildings. In terms of design and layout, that's dealt with in para 12.51 of the report. They are reserved matters, so the layout plan is illustrative just to show how the site could be developed. And the parameter plan, go back to this, does show the highest density areas in the centre of the site overlooking the open space, with the lower densities on the edges of the site to provide a transition out to the countryside and to the existing developments around. So officers consider that that's appropriate, and that the applicants have shown that that quantum of development could be accommodated on the site. In terms of sustainable design measures, they're all set out in paragraph 12.7.3 of the report. In relation to neighbour amenity, that's dealt with in para 12.79 onwards. Said that the detailed layout would come through at the reserve matter stage. But officers consider that where housing and the school is proposed can be delivered without causing significant harm to those existing properties that adjoin the application site. And in respect of the new housing proposed on the eastern side of the site, again, it's acknowledged there will be a significant change for occupiers here in terms of a change to the view, which is at the moment is out onto open countryside. But as I've said in the report, simply being able to see something doesn't equate to planning harm, and officers are of the view that that can be delivered without being overbearing or unneighbourly at the reserve matter stage. In terms of transport matters, which is one of the key issues to be considered as access is being determined at this stage, that's dealt with in paragraphs 12.101 onwards of the report. You'll see that the Highway Authority have raised no objection to the proposal on transport grounds, and it's considered the proposed vehicular access points are satisfactory, and the proposal in terms of vehicular movements isn't considered to have a severe impact on the highway network, which is the test in both the development plan and the MPPF. As I've said, the proposal involves the closure of Hurstwood Lane to through traffic, which would be a benefit of the scheme. That would have to be done through a traffic regulation order, which is a separate process that's administered by the County Council. But that will be a requirement of the planning permission, and that's under condition 23. So I've gone through the off-site highway works in terms of the various crossing points that we put in that would provide a benefit for pedestrians in terms of accessing the site. We'll come on to this in more detail, no doubt, as we get into the debate, but a particular issue and concern from the Town Council is their desire for the signalisation of the junction of Hurstwood Lane and Fox Hill, and the reasons for the Town Council wishing that to be done set out in their comments on the application. The application doesn't propose the signalisation of that junction on the basis that the applicant's evidence doesn't indicate that it's required for that to be done, for the development to be carried out satisfactorily. And you've also got, as I've mentioned before, those practical difficulties of the private access points into the site. And those points are accepted by the Highway Authority, and that's referred to explicitly in paragraph 12.131 of the report. The proposed signalised junction, proposed signalised crossing of Fox Hill will provide a safe crossing and would have the added benefit of slowing traffic down on Fox Hill. In terms of car parking, that would all come through at the reserve matter stage, but it's expected that would conform with county standards, as would cycle parking. Ecology and trees, the various issues there are dealt with in the paragraph 12.193 to 12.202 in respect of trees. It's expected that 44 individual trees would need to be removed, of which 2 are category B and the remainder are C and U's. There will clearly be opportunities for significant planting at the reserve matters stage, and the character of Hurstwood Lane would remain the same, because the overwhelming majority of trees along Hurstwood Lane would remain. So it would be at the access points where some trees would need to be removed to facilitate access into the site. In terms of ecology, that's dealt with in paragraphs 12.204 onwards in the committee report. You'll see that's all been assessed by the council's ecological consultant, who's raised no objection to the application. I think it's worth flagging up in regards to biodiversity net gain. Unlike sites that are within the site allocations development plan document, there's no policy requirement in the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan for biodiversity net gain on this site, because it's quite an old allocation. However, the applicants have indicated an aspiration to deliver 10% biodiversity net gain, and I think as members know now from previous meetings, that can be delivered on site, off site, or by purchasing of the statutory credits, or a combination of both. But a planning condition can be used to secure that, and that's in the report. The final figure for the BNG would need to come forward when the reserve matters are submitted. Drainage, that's dealt with paragraphs 12.245 onwards, so I won't go through that in great detail. Only to say that as it's an outline scheme, it's not necessary to have a fully designed drainage scheme for the site at this stage. It's just necessary to demonstrate that in principle the site can be drained, and you'll see from the comments of your drainage engineer that he's satisfied that that is the case. In terms of infrastructure, that's dealt with in paragraph 12.264 onwards, and works are ongoing in respect of the necessary legal agreement to secure the required infrastructure contributions, the transfer of the land for the school to the county council, and the transfer of land to the town council for the burial ground allotments and the country park. You'll see from the report that concerns have been raised by a number of third parties about existing infrastructure. But I'm sure, as members will know, developers are only required to mitigate the impact of their own development, and that's what the legal agreement will do. So in terms of just summing up, the conclusion and the planning balance, that's all set out in section 13 of the report. So, let's say, outline planning application, the means of access to be determined at this stage. Subsequent reserve matters application would determine the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale of the site. But those reserve matters would need to be in conformity with the parameter plans that form part of this outline application. So the parameter plans, of which one is on the slide here, are fixing the location of the residential development in the 4 parcels, the location of the school, and the location of the burial grounds, allotments and open space. So planning applications do need to be determined in accordance with the development plan unless the material considerations indicate otherwise. And the development plan has to be read as a whole, so it's not necessary to comply with each and every single policy in the plan for it to be in compliance. I've said the majority of the site is on land that is allocated for residential development in the neighbourhood plan and the district plan. There is a departure in respect of the housing that's proposed at this northern parcel. In terms of the impact of that on the countryside and an effect on the character of the area, it's your officer's view that that part of the development will assimilate well into the existing built form and won't represent a wider incursion into the countryside. The scheme does provide a large area of open space that will be transferred to the town council, and the benefits of the open space and the allotments and burial ground. It's important to also recognise that the proposal would allow the council to continue to deliver its housing targets and maintain a 5-year housing land supply, which members know is crucial to avoid the development plan becoming out of date and planning by appeal. Overall, it's your officer's view that whilst not in full conformity with the development plan, there are significant benefits of the scheme, and that overall there are material considerations that indicate that the application should be approved. I think that's it, Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Right, we have 6 speakers. The first speaker against is Graham Hunt. As advised earlier, you have 3 minutes. I will try and indicate when you have a minute left, and after 3 minutes, please sum up in 1 sentence if you haven't finished by then. And once you start speaking, the time will start.
I'm all right, aren't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
please go ahead, yeah.
Good afternoon. I live on Hurstwood Lane. I live at the top end of Hurstwood Lane. As you come to the junction with the bypass and the first house going north on Hurstwood Lane, so I live the closest to Hurst Close Farm Road. 30 years ago, my previous owner of my house bought half an acre of woodland immediately adjacent to us, and they bought it from the hospital with reference to the Secretary of State for Health who signed the original document, which I've got here, and on the basis so I own the first 70 yards of woodland that flows down Hurstwood Lane. 5 years later, Mid-Sussex bought the majority of the land we're talking about on there from the same hospital, the same Secretary of State, for £220,000 25 years ago, on the basis that it was countryside and not for development. In 2010, Tom Clark and Crosstone Securities signed what in my language is a dubious pact to develop the land. Then, following the sale to Homes England in 2018, the developer, Crosstone Securities, walked away with millions of pounds, and you will know what Mid Sussex took away from the deal. Every aspect of this proposal is a nightmare for the residents of Haywards Heath. You'll have read about the school location, the two major junctions, the utilisation of Parcel 4, the safety of people and children. The only good news I've got is that a friend of some of the people around the table, Jeff and Anne Martin, who are neighbours of mine, are recovering okay from a significant vehicle accident in the at the top junction onto the bypass. Their car was a write-off. And there's been another similar, not dissimilar incident with another house from Birch Way on the top end of the...
Could you sum up in a sentence, please?
Sorry?
Could you sum up in a sentence, please? You had your 3 minutes.
I've had my 3 minutes, I've not started yet.
Well, I'm sorry. I would ask you to...
Let me say, Hurstwood Lane is a real significant problem. Hurstwood Lane is not made for this sort of development. It's in places 10 to 12 feet wide. The part that I own and the part below it is the trees are 6 inches from the roadway. The roots obviously go under the roadway. The branches overarch the roadway.
I must insist that you finish now. I'm sorry, but...
well, it's ridiculous.
Sorry.
We can listen to everything else, but not listen to what's the real story and where
I'm sorry,
nobody...
we do have procedures, and I did explain to you before you started that you had 3 minutes.
Let me just say this then. Homes England have not, to respect to them here, have not spoken to anybody in Haywards Heath, as far as I'm concerned, for 18 months.
Sorry,
They're taking
can
no
I
local
ask you
input
please
at
to
all.
vacate the seat, please?
My final statement. Sorry.
I'm sorry, you have had your 3 minutes. Those are the agreements. I'm very sorry. Right, we do have 3 speakers from Homes England. One on behalf of Homes England. 1 is from Homes England and two from WSP. The first one, Charlotte Omani. Right, the same applies, 3 minutes from when you start, and I'll indicate when you've got a minute left.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members. My name is Charlotte Omani, and I am a Head of Planning and Enabling at Homes England. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon to speak in support of Homes England's outline proposals for development at Hurst Farm. Homes England is the government's housing and regeneration agency. We're not a typical developer. Our outlook and our priorities are different. Our role is to support the sector to tackle the housing challenges faced by communities around the country, to accelerate and support the delivery of high-quality, sustainable new homes and successful and thriving places people can be proud of. We do this in a number of ways. We work closely with local leaders, the community, and house builders of all sizes, and we embed quality and good design into our building leases through the use of Building for a Healthy Life Standard, design, and parcel codes. We retain approval rights for reserved matters applications prepared by our delivery partners. Hurst Farm received resolution to grant planning permission for 375 new homes and supporting infrastructure in 2019, but subsequently stalled at the Section 106 stage. Homes England acquired the site when the previous application was withdrawn. Since this time, we have used our funding, expertise, and resource to work in collaboration with local leaders, the community, and key stakeholders to unlock the delivery of Hurst Farm. Our proposals will deliver 375 new homes, including 131 affordable homes, as part of an improved master plan layout. The delivery of homes is identified as part of this council's 5-year housing land supply and is one of the agency's key outputs for this year, demonstrating our commitment to delivery. The scheme also provides for a new 2-form entry primary school and early years facilities to meet both the needs of new families on Hurst Farm and the wider unmet needs in Haywards Heath. We are in advanced discussions with the Department of Education and the County Council to expedite transfer and delivery of the school site, and an academy to operate the new school has been identified. The proposals have been landscape-led. They adopt a sustainable drainage scheme which uses the natural slope of the site, a development layout that protects the existing woodland, and open space proposals which seek to enhance biodiversity, further details of which are secured by condition. Homes England is also proposing to gift land to the Town Council to provide a new, much-needed burial ground, allotments and a country park. In conclusion, Hurst Farm is an allocated site for development, which has been subject to extensive consultation over many years. Granting permission today will secure much-needed market and affordable homes to support the Council's 5-year housing supply, a new primary school, SEN facility, nursery, burial ground, allotments and a country park, with a package of Section 106 contributions worth around £7 million. The proposals were unanimously approved by Lewes District Council yesterday evening, and I hope members will agree with your officer's carefully considered recommendation and also grant approval this afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Michael Wood from WSP. 3 minutes start when you start speaking.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Michael Wood. I'm a Technical Director of Planning at WSP, and we've been supporting Homes England on this project. We were first instructed to help unlock the Hurst Farm development site. The site is of strategic importance to Mid Sussex as a key site to maintain its housing land supply, whilst providing important local infrastructure, most notably a new 2-form entry primary school. As you have heard, one of the main reasons the previous 2019 scheme stalled were the challenges around the proposed location of the school and achieving an appropriate access solution to it. On review of the previous master plan, it was clear that there was an opportunity to review the composition of the layout and particularly the location of the school in this context. Through this analysis, it was concluded that the previous location of the school was not feasible. The school would have been isolated, difficult to get to, and immediately adjacent to the new proposed burial ground. It also contributed to significant impacts to the A272 Hurstwood Lane junction, which at the time was the focus of significant public objection. It was therefore decided that a preferable location for the school land would be the southern corner of the site. So the housing previously proposed there was swapped with the school effectively. The school site is now in a more accessible location, closer to bus stops and the existing community and easier to get to by foot and cycle. Technical work on the Fox Hill Hurstwood Lane junction has demonstrated that the immediate road network can satisfactorily accommodate the school. Furthermore, the scheme will deliver traffic calming measures on Fox Hill to slow traffic down, including a new signalised crossing point that will include access to the school. We appreciate there are concerns about the impact of vehicle movement and inappropriate parking during school drop-off and pick-up. This is a matter that can be controlled through subsequent reserve matters applications, the detailed layout of the school and travel plans. We have worked closely with officers at both Lewes and Mid Sussex to formulate this application and test the impacts of these design changes in the context of policy. The proposed approach is the optimum solution for the site, delivering a high-quality townscape solution that will deliver an appropriate mix of land uses this side of Hurstwood Lane. We've carefully considered the constraints of the site and the surrounding area, notably the 3 areas of ancient woodland surrounding the site. The master plan protects these areas through appropriate buffers, and they will be given the utmost protection throughout construction and then beyond through site management. The development will provide a number of public benefits, as you've heard. The 2-form entry primary school with additional SEN and early years provision that will service the existing community and existing needs, as well as the proposed occupiers of the development itself, along with the public open space, which comprises country park, play areas, additional areas of public open space, burial ground, and the allotments. We're also proposing off-site highway works that, as you've heard, will improve traffic calming along Fox Hill, but also other junctions within the vicinity of the area. It should also not be lost that the scheme will provide much-needed private and affordable housing at a time when provision and affordability of housing is desperately acute. We would like to take this opportunity to thank officers for their diligent work on this application, and we ask you to support their professional recommendation and grant planning permission this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephanie Howard?
Yeah.
From WSP. Right, again, the 3 minutes will start when you start speaking.
Thank you. I'm Steph Howard, a Technical Director at WSP, specialising in development transport. The principle of movement for the proposed development is predicated on the provision of high-quality active links to provide accessibility and connectivity to the wider Haywards Heath area by walking and cycling. Along with the closure of Hurstwood Lane to through traffic, a comprehensive package of off-site improvements are proposed to encourage and provide for travel by active modes to and from the development, including additional footway at the southern end of Hurstwood Lane, a puffin crossing on Fox Hill to connect with the primary school, 3 additional signalised crossing points connecting towards the wider local area and the town centre, and the signalisation of the Hurstwood Lane junction with Rocky Lane, A270. Our assessment shows that the development will not have a significant impact on the highway network, other than at the Fox Hill Rocky Lane roundabout, where a mitigation scheme is proposed. A residential travel plan and a school travel plan will be adopted to reduce reliance on the car and demand for car parking, and to maximise the use of more sustainable forms of transport. The location of the school has been amended since the previous proposals and is now in the southwest of the site, adjoining Fox Hill off Hurstwood Lane. One of the reasons for this is in relation to the potential impact of school traffic on the Rocky Lane-Hurstwood Lane junction, given the nature and speed of traffic on Rocky Lane. With the school located adjacent to Fox Hill, and with the closure of Hurstwood Lane as a through route, the highway network performs considerably better than with the previous proposals. There will be a new pedestrian crossing on Fox Hill, which will provide access for pupils into the school, reducing walk distances for those living off-site. With the provision of safe and suitable routes to the school, it's expected that a good proportion of pupils will travel in a sustainable way, therefore reducing the congestion that can occur around some primary schools. Through the school travel plan, sustainable travel will be heavily encouraged, and the opportunities and benefits outlined for all staff and people and parents. The demand for parking at school times is not expected to be unreasonable or to create issues on the local highway network. However, should parking become an issue, additional measures can be introduced through the school travel plan to counter any concerns. Concern has also been raised locally regarding the need to signalise the Fox Hill Hurstwood Lane junction. Our assessments show that there is no technical need to introduce traffic signals at the junction in regards to either capacity or safety. Whilst there would be a minor level of queuing at the junction during the morning peak, it is expected to be minimal with minor delays. At all other times of the day, the junction would operate within capacity. Introducing traffic signals at the junction would create delays to traffic 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including school holidays. During the weekday PM peak alone, delay at the junction would double with traffic signals. The short-term, minor additional delay during the AM peak is considered acceptable compared to the impact of introducing delays to all traffic at all other times. The introduction of the pedestrian crossing on Fox Hill will also provide the benefit of reducing speed and creating gaps in the traffic travelling south along Fox Hill, making it easier for traffic to turn into Hurstwood Lane. In summary, safe and suitable access will be provided for all users with enhanced facilities for walking and cycling to fully maximise the opportunity to promote sustainable travel modes so that they can be taken up in accordance with paragraph 110 of the NPPF. The residual cumulative impact of the development on the local highway network is not severe in accordance with paragraph 111 of the NPPF.
Could you wind up, please?
Yeah. All technical assessments in relation to transport and highways are agreed with West Sussex County Council, which is reflected in the recommendation to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, so the next speaker is the County Councillor for the area, Councillor Stephen Hillier. Councillor Hillier, as with Mid-Sussex councillors, will not be restricted to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I will try and be brief, and thank you for your time allowing me to speak. I'm generally supportive of the application and the overall development, especially as it's by Homes England, because I know they've been good partners, and I'm appreciative of the huge amount of time that they've spent talking to all of us councillors locally. And has also been in the district plans and allocated site for some time. An additional primary school for the town is urgently needed, as is a cemetery. I have to say I did prefer when the school was located up at Hurstwood Lane, but I'm not going to unpick that particular bag. Having been a town councillor when this development was first mooted, probably over a decade ago, and part of informal discussions between members of both authorities, I stand behind most of the town council's position, particularly in relation to this highway matter, but also the arrangements for the Country Park Cemetery and allotments to the east of Hurstwood Lane. But my comments today are largely in relation to highways matters, and obviously I provided a text of what I was going to be saying, so officers have actually covered a lot of the points I was going to make, but I will proceed anyway. My concern is particularly in the Fox Hill, Hurstwood Lane area, where there have been 3 major incidents in the last few years, and where I am making a plea for the signalised junction incorporating a pedestrian crossing facilities. The stretch of road around the junction of Hurstwood Lane and Fox Hill has been blighted by excessive speeding for many years, due not least to it sitting at the bottom of 2 slopes, which expedite speeding in both directions, and also the draw of the national speed limit, which is only a short distance away. And on this, I'd strongly draw your attention to the Town Council's comments on pages 325 to 330 of the papers, or 219 to 224 of the report, which makes some really good pertinent points about the speed data and safety. As well as long-standing residents in the area being concerned over the speeding, the newer residents of Gamblemead continually complain of the speed past their turning, and this includes a number of complaints of residents who slowed down to turn right only to be overtaken by motorists speedily exiting Haywards Heath. In addition to the speeding concern, the new development will see a huge increase in the number of cars wishing to turn right out of Hurstwood Lane, crossing the downhill southbound traffic in order to access the town centre infrastructure. And I know what we've heard from some of the colleagues, but I'm afraid I do dispute it. We've heard about how the potential pedestrian crossing just up the hill will break up traffic, and I'm sure that will facilitate cars wanting to turn left out of Hurstwood Lane, heading towards Ditchling. It will be of no assistance whatsoever, probably, to cars wishing to turn right, not least because at rush hours they're probably going to be faced with a queue already blocking the carriageway, waiting to go through the pedestrian lights that have been activated. So I do see there is a very genuine issue here to be sorted. It may be that this proposed signalised crossing will provide a degree of traffic calming on that hill coming down. But obviously it's not completely the answer, because obviously the highways request is that there will be further information coming to the detailed planning in order to carry out further safety arrangements. And I would at this point, particularly as in the room, like to acknowledge Ian Gledhill on the huge amount of time that he spent talking with me and councillors. And there are aspects in the proposal and in the plan where he has addressed some of our concerns, but we have a massive difference of opinion over this particular junction. Mr. King's already talked about other prospective developments that will impact upon this junction. I can't recall if you mentioned Rogers Farm, which is the planning application's already in, and it wasn't listed in your papers, but perhaps you mentioned that at the start, and I'm sorry if I missed it. And then there's Lewes District Council. We know, pretty sure, going to put some more houses on there, and in your own district, emerging district plan, there is an allocation for 70 plus houses, all of which will come out at that bottom junction of Hurstwood Lane. Now, I know that this application, this development, can't be responsible for future developments, but I have a concern that the layout that is canned here will then prevent any mitigation in the future, and also future Section 106 and TAD monies just won't be enough from these other small piece developments to sort the problem out. So I do feel that we should get it right first time. The point about the driveway coming into the junction is a good one. But there are engineers have ways around this. And when I spoke to the highways area manager, he actually, without me prompting, said, well, we can get around that. We can approach the house owner and reconfigure where their drive came out, etc. So it's not insurmountable. It's not a barrier to this solution. Return to the school. The catchment area includes Wivelsfield, so there will be a good number of children that are being dropped off by school. The current Wivelsfield schools being full. And as councillors, we often hear that in relation to school, that they are going to encourage sustainable travel. And they do, but there's no legal requirement upon a school to have a travel plan. I have 5 schools in my division, and 2 of them have steadfastly refused to over the years, which makes it very difficult for any authority and any council and any developer to sort out their transport plans. So I think that afternoon pickup at least, which tends to be the most troublesome time, because obviously families are waiting, not knowing exactly what time the children are coming out, there are going to be cars all over the place. At the moment, they can probably park on the main Fox Hill, causing congestion on that main road, or they could go into Hurstwood Lane, and what's going to happen there when they're trying to do U-turns, because of course it's going to be blocked off at one end, or they're going to go into the new Gamble Mead. So I would implore this committee to request of the developers to come up with a really robust scheme whereby the school traffic that is going to blight this area is managed as far as it can be. I'm not talking to everything I sent through to committee members yesterday. It was a long missive, and thank you for those that have taken the time and trouble to read it. I do want to talk, just mention the lack of street lighting. I haven't seen anything in the proposals, but there are many pages of documents. But there is very little street lighting here, and it's already causing a concern for Gamble Mead, and with the school coming there and it being dark in the winter at pickup times, I am concerned about lighting levels there. It already causes Gamble Mead residents a problem because actually they can't see where their junction turning in, and more importantly, again, these speeding idiots coming out of the town don't realise it's a junction and overtake them when they're trying to turn in. Actually, I'm not going to, the other stuff I mentioned in writing, I think we have a problem in Haywards Heath in the roundabouts up near the Birch Hotel. And Ian has addressed it in part and thank you by putting kind of traffic lights ahead, but there is concerns. You've got traffic coming along westbound along the A272, then comes round a blind corner, and then we'll be faced with a pedestrian crossing, at which point some drivers currently are used to putting their foot down because they're about to hit a 50-mile-an-hour zone. I personally think, and I don't like them in general, I think there is a rationale for having a 20-mile-an-hour zone in this area, but that's something I'm working on. I just wanted to float that past you. In conclusion, I would very much like this committee to consider a condition that insists that the developers and highways planners commit to relooking at the Fox Hill location and any other of my comments that feel merit, and come up with a scheme that facilitates the new traffic movements that I've outlined, and importantly provides an enduring engineering solution to the speeding at this location. Not only will this resolve a long-standing problem, it will also create a much safer highways environment for children and families using the prospective core facilities. To not take the great opportunity offered by this sizable development may be seen as a failure by the system, not least as if nothing is done, I envisage many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds of local authority monies will have to be found in the future to deal with these problems when residents have occupied the new housing. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Hill.
We're heading to the time where we've got, the meeting will go over 3
3
hours,
hours, yeah.
so we're going to have to take a vote now, I think.
Okay. Right.
Do you want me to remind
Well,
people
just
about
the
minutes
last
on
speaker.
If it goes over 15 minutes, we're in trouble.
Oh, yes, he's a ward councillor, isn't he? Right. Right, members, I've just been reminded that there is in standard orders that the meeting would normally be abandoned after 3 hours, but I would put it to the vote for members that we continue with this proposal beyond the 3 hour mark. Are members happy for us to do that?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Right, now ask Councillor Kenny, the local ward councillor, and again he isn't restricted in time, but we would ask him to be succinct.
Well, thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak. My comments are going to be in 2 parts. First, as the representative of Frankland's residents, and secondly, in my communal role as a MSDC councillor. So first of all, as a representative of the residents of Frankland's ward They are resolutely, and have been throughout the very long planning process, against this development. There are 140 objections in the record, and their objections are manifold, and they are well documented in the report, which was very fair in reflecting them, and they cover a multitude of topics, more than can be considered today, but they touch upon encroachment on greenfield, accessibility, drainage, landscape, impact on nature, net zero requirements, and so forth. But today, I'm only going to talk about two of the topics, the ones which are germane to this particular hearing. And that's really around accessibility, access, and layout. So the first issue is the northern junction, the one at Old Farm Close. The residents who live along Greenhill Way and all the related developments have been absolutely clear that they already have significant problems joining the A272 bypass, and that's in advance of this development. Secondly, as Steve very clearly pointed out, there have been, since the original applications were made, new developments which are in that hinterland. So all of those new East Sussex developments will all need to find their way out through that same access point. That is also the area where the impact of the ancient woodland has the greatest effect on the ability of Hurstwood Lane to carry traffic. And it was this very topic which, as we saw, led to the new location for the school, which I'll return to as to whether or not that's a subject that has to be completely closed. Then, secondly, the next area that people have raised in great numbers is the whole question of the Foxhill junction. Luckily, I don't have to waste your time talking about it. You've heard it very eloquently addressed by Steve, and it's well addressed in the Town Council's information, so you already have that. I would just reinforce the point that Steve made about the Gamble Mead and Rogers Farm developments. I think we really require traffic calming on the whole of the approach to Haywards Heath, and that should include lighting and proper consideration for the people who need to emerge and turn into the estates. Okay, lastly, on the subject of accessibility, we've heard a lot of good words about sustainable access. But essentially, which is going to be one of the main things that I come on to, in this development, all of the sustainable transport will have to eventually end up at one of the two roundabouts, either the roundabout at the top of Lewis Road or way up at the Birch Hotel roundabout, if you're going by foot or going by a car, more or less, that's it. So, there you are, the residents are completely opposed to the development. As a councillor, I absolutely recognise the need for new housing in the area, and I'm absolutely supportive, totally supportive of the permission for development and all of the other facilities that have been referred to, the new school and all the rest of it. Completely in favour of those things. Again, any regalia that I have is going to be mainly to do with the access. I'll stop along the way and talk about the affordable housing provision. Really delighted to see that fully met. That's excellent and something to be applauded. I'd like to understand the rationale for the modelling and the balancing and the number of four-bedroom houses that there are within the site. I'm not sure that we need quite that many, but I think that we can deal with that in due course. But it's the access to the site that I feel is lamentable. We've heard of so many problems at both ends of the site and all along Hurstwood Lane. So one of the things I tried to find out in my research is whether any detailed analysis had been done about direct access to the development site from the Rocky Lane bypass. That's directly into the parcels from the bypass, other than, obviously, the top end, which is a junction onto the bypass. But south of that, there are, I believe, several opportunities where accesses could be made. And I understand that nothing will be straightforward. Some of the land isn't within the ownership of the applicant, But one of the great things about Homes England's involvement is their status as a quasi-governmental organisation. They can help break down some of those barriers. But I invite you to imagine what we'd be looking at if we could get direct access to the development site and parcels off of the Rocky Lane bypass, which at the moment allows you to drive at 50 miles an hour in the future, perhaps between two traffic jams, one at the Fox Hill roundabout and one at the Birch Hotel roundabout. I'd much rather see a constant flow of traffic at 30 miles an hour that gets where it needs to go, rather than a racetrack, which is in effect a barrier. It's a barrier to human beings passing it, barrier to cars passing it. So I'm very conscious of time. I've given you an outline of what I'm angling for. This is it. I absolutely support the principle of development. I would love there to be a condition on the approval that says, let's have that study, which I understand it has never been made, to say what would it take to give direct access off of what's called the relief road. I'm not sure it gives much relief to any of the residents at the moment. At the moment, it's effectively a barrier, not anything else. If we could have a condition which said that the applicant would look very seriously at doing that, I think we could find it could obviate a whole shed load of problems that we have with the ancient woodland and the pressure of traffic on the northern access and on the Fox Hill access. So that's, in summary, my position.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, well, obviously, a major part of the issues that members have raised, the speakers have raised, is to do with the highways issues. So I would invite Ian Gledhill to make some comments, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to keep as succinct as I can on this, because I suspect there's going to be a lot of debate around highway matters. But ultimately, with respect to Hurstwood Lane, the Fox Hill Hurstwood Lane junction, the question ultimately is whether improvements there are reasonable and necessary in planning terms, and whether any severe or otherwise unacceptable safety impacts would arise as leaving the junction as it is. Those are ultimately the planning tests stemming also from the NPPF. I mean, in regards to the technical layout of that junction, it complies with all necessary design standards. In capacity terms, it's been modelled with the development traffic, and it comes out within capacity, as other speakers have already said. In terms of the speeding issue that has been raised on several occasions, I mean, again, it's not necessarily for the development to resolve those issues. I mean, they're beyond the powers of this development to resolve. I mean, the traffic lights, the puffing crossing that's been proposed, that is ultimately there to provide a safe crossing as opposed to slowing the traffic directly. But we do have a condition that the applicants have accepted to implement further suitable measures on Fox Hill to try and reinforce the existing speed limit along there. I was going to, at this stage, limit my comments to that junction and see where the debate goes and obviously come back. But if there are any further points you want me to address at this stage, Chairman.
Have you got any comments to make about access off the relief road at this stage?
At this stage, I mean, we have a signalised junction at the Hurstwood Lane, existing Hurstwood Lane stub. It complies to all necessary standards. It would provide a safe means for traffic to exit out onto the A272 because, of course, it will stop traffic going north or southbound. In terms of a direct access onto the A272, anything's feasible, but ultimately you have to look at what is reasonable in terms of this development. I mean, there is a significant change in levels within the site to the A272 itself to achieve a direct access. So I think in the grand scheme of things, it's unlikely to be feasible, and it would itself have quite a significant footprint and remove quite a large chunk of the developable area. But again, we shall see where the debate goes and answer further questions.
Thank you very much. Steve, did you want to make any comments on the speakers' presentations?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Only in respect of the issue that's been raised about an alternative access direct from the Leaf Road. Clearly, that's not what is before the Planning Committee today. So we can't, at this forum, redesign the scheme. We have to make an assessment of the plans and the details that are before the committee, and ultimately come to a view as to whether those are acceptable or not. So I think we just have to look at what is before us today, and as has been said, the view of the statutory body that's responsible for the road network, whose views should therefore be given significant weight, is that the proposed access arrangements are satisfactory in highway safety terms and capacity terms. So, as I say, I think we have to focus on what's before us today, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, members, who would like to speak? Bearing in mind we are looking at outline, we're not going into the detail of the site today. Councillor Bates.
Well, I was going to say in 2 or 3 tranches here, Mr. Chairman, in as much as I'd like to ask quite a lot of questions of what's been spoken about first and try to clear up some of those matters. And you did say that there was going to be questions taken to the highways officer, and I had a couple. So I don't know if I can clear those 2 up.
Yeah, do, please.
That is that, have you considered, or has the County Council considered actually closing Hurstwood Lane at the Fox and Hounds? Because this is really a big problem that's being discussed. And, you know, is that one way out of this? Is you just close it at that point and that's it. And the other one, which is not related necessarily to the planning application that we've heard, is the speed on Fox Hill. The Fox Hill is engineered to encourage speeding, and then suddenly somebody puts a 30-mile-an-hour speed sign at the bottom. Now, okay, we're going to put a pedestrian or pelican crossing at the bottom, which is very useful, but you've got people coming, particularly out of Haywards Heath, that are speeding out of there. They can't help it because they're going down a road. If you've got somebody coming 40 miles an hour at that crossing point, it's not very encouraging to cross even if there is a pelican crossing. You've got a speeding car that's going to be braking. And the thing is, the problem of that road is it's engineered for the speeding. And could you not take that out in conjunction with this crossing point?
Before I go to the highways officer, can I just remind members that we're discussing the proposal in front of us, not trying to redesign it.
But there was in conjunction with the crossing to aid access to the school.
The closure of the road is redesigning. Would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the closure of Hurstwood Lane, from its southern end, I don't think that would be possible. Obviously, it's being proposed to close in the middle section, subject to the TRO being approved. If you close it at the southern end, it's then how there's a number of existing properties. Basically, it's the feasibility of that and the potential for a significant number of objections. I mean, anything's doable through a TRO, but ultimately, I think that would fail. With regards to the crossing itself, it is quite possible to have speed discriminatory loops installed in the highway that kind of pick up those speeding cars. Obviously, they shouldn't be speeding. It's a 30-mile-an-hour section of road, but they can pick up the speeding traffic and they can delay the green man, as it were, to allow those vehicles to pass. So it is something that can be designed, can be incorporated into the signal design, should we say.
Thank you. So, yes, please. Yeah.
I would just remind members to look at proposed planning condition 22 on page 192 of my papers. No part of the development access from the B2112 Foxhill Hurstwood Lane shall be first occupied until a scheme of speed management measures. You can read it for yourself, but until a scheme of management measures have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. So we do actually address that in terms of expecting a scheme to be designed, approved and delivered in terms of speed management.
Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to thank all the speakers, but particularly Councillor Hillier and Councillor Kenny. I think they hit the nail absolutely on the head. You've got the local town council who knows their patch better than I do, certainly, coming from East Grinstead. You've got two very experienced local councillors saying that that junction effectively is unacceptable. As a man on the Clapham Omnibus, when we did the site visit on Monday, it didn't take me very long to work out that that junction is totally unacceptable. I hear what Mr Gledhill and West Sussex County Council Highways have said, but this is not the first instance or location of sites where public perception, public feeling is radically different from what the County Council Highways engineer says, with the greatest of respect. And something needs to be done about improving the safety of that junction. Our district plan DP21, page 69 and 70, I quote, a transport network that feels and is safer and healthier to use, that's the objective, and as a policy that the scheme protects the safety of road users and pedestrians. I just put one of two sub-points. So I'm frankly incredulous that a scheme that we're proposing 254 houses or circa of that number, plus all the school traffic entering and exiting from that junction opposite the Fox and Hounds pub that we parked in. Absolutely incredulous.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Right, thank you, Chairman. I think overall, I'm in favour of the scheme. It's obviously in the district plan and in the Haywards Heath neighbourhood plan. I'm also comfortable with the relocation of the primary school and on the east side of Hurstwood Lane. A lot has been said about the junction. I'm unhappy about it because when we went to the site on Monday, trying to come out the Fox and Hounds pub car park, we were confronted with cars zooming down the hill from the north and zooming up the hill from the south, and it took some time even to sort of get out, and that was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it will be really hellish at sort of peak periods. I'm not convinced of why we shouldn't be able to have traffic lights on that junction of Fox Hill and Hurstwood Lane, because most of the traffic coming out of there will likely to be turning right and going up the hill into Haywards Heath to school or to work or to the station. And that will therefore, unless we have some very, very strict traffic calming measures on traffic coming down Fox Hill, that junction will be a nightmare. The second thing is, when I was on the site, I only walked a small distance up Hurstwood Lane. It was quite narrow, and although the way they've blocked up halfway up Hurstwood Lane, so the two developments to the north will go northwards and the two developments and the school will go southwards. Is that lane really wide enough? And perhaps you ought to think about future-proofing that lane, especially if you look at the site maps. The site south of the east development, the burial ground, the allotments and phase 4, there's a big rectangular plot, which to anybody who wants to develop is an obvious place to develop extra housing. And although that's probably in Lewes District and not comes under our remit, their access will again be to the south part of Hurstwood Lane. So are we going to future-proof that? Perhaps I'll also ask Steve, do we have any information about any intentions for that land south of the phase 4 development?
Can I, before you reply, can I ask a question from the chair? It was my understanding part of the problem with the traffic lights there is you couldn't control the traffic coming out of the pub car park by traffic lights at that point. So perhaps you could answer the members.
I think it's fair to say, Chairman, since this application was submitted last August, various options have been considered for this junction. One of them was the signalisation. That was ruled out at an early stage because of primarily the reasons you stated there, the private accesses coming into it and how you'd actually control those those movements within the phasing of the traffic signals. The further issue is the delay those traffic signals will introduce. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about concerns here at the AM peak, where the school is kind of the dropping off period. That's primarily, as I hear it, the concern. It's at all other times, traffic will be delayed on the north and southbound arms that wouldn't ordinarily be delayed. So it's whether or not the benefit for effectively a 45-minute period in the morning will outweigh the impact that will occur at the remainder of the day. But like I say, the feasibility of doing something at that junction has been considered through the TA and through subsequent technical notes. The only other point I'll pick up on is the width of Hurstwood Lane. I mean, obviously that's a two-way lane at the moment. That's used by a significant number of vehicles. The stopping up of it in the central section will reduce the kind of through movements, and in theory should reduce the number of vehicles using it. So, I mean, I wouldn't in practice envisage see that road needing to be widened. It's two-way at the moment, and it has been used in that way for some time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Ian. I think that's really helpful, but I must remind members not to conflate the views of a site visit where the pedestrian crossing hadn't yet been implemented and the measures required by condition 22 hadn't been implemented, with what the scheme or the sense of that road will be once those measures have been delivered. So you mustn't conflate what you saw on site with what will be delivered and what the Local Highways Authority has said, and it's stated in the report, in its present form is considered to be acceptable. So please do remember that.
Thank you. Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, probably both rather silly, but the middle bit of Hurstwood Lane, would that be permeable still to cycle and walkers, yeah? So that's great. Okay, and has anybody discussed a mini roundabout at that junction outside the Fox and Hounds, or is it just too many private exits stopping it? Because that wouldn't delay anybody. Thank you.
Ian, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. A mini roundabout may appear as a white painted blob on the ground, but ultimately it's got quite a lot of technical design standards that go behind it. Could that be feasible there? I would probably be inclined to say no. I think it's how it stacks up. I don't think you'd have the visibility for traffic looking to the... I think it's difficult to describe, but ultimately you're pushing the give-way lines back into the junction. So if you can imagine the give-way lines at the moment are on the carriageway edge, for a mini roundabout you'd push them back quite a way. My concern would be with a mini roundabout would then be how the visibility display comes to the south to the traffic that is approaching from the Ditchling direction. So again, it's something that I'm not aware has been looked at, but I don't think it's something that I perhaps would be comfortable in entertaining on a road such as this.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I think I'm going to come back on this and just do what I was going to speak upon, and all the notes and questions I wanted to ask, I'm going to have to leave and write into the council and ask for answers, because there's 2 pages there and I don't think we're going to get through them. We should have had a meeting like Haywards Heath Town Council had 4 meetings to discuss this particular application. And here we are, we're trying to make a decision on a planning decision which is binding. And there's an awful lot of questions being asked by people. I'm very unhappy about a lot of the things. So basically, the history, we purchased the land on the basis that a lot of it would be a country park. And now we're suddenly going to be building on it. That's sad. Houses are accepted, that we've got to build homes. It's just that the question is, where should they be built in conjunction with the resiting of the school? And that still seems to be open for debate. The irony of it is that last night at 10 o'clock, I got a letter from Homes England, I expect we all did, saying that they couldn't deliver a footpath just beyond the section of land that's been discussed, the private ownership into the district, through there to gain access to the school. Now, when they built Bolnor Village, they drove 2 roads through ancient bridleways and woods. And that was pretty okay then. The district council went along with it. So why can't we do the same here, just for a little footpath? Then we have highways with everybody's discussed that. One thing I would say, if this was to proceed, this particular, I would question whether the parcel 2 access should not go out onto the relief road. I know a lot of people are saying about the relief road, but I think it might be a better option than coming out onto Fox Hill. So that's trying to be constructive. And then it really gets down to the eastern side. I call it the eastern side. It's the country park area. I think a school would have lesser impact than building houses on that side. And the irony of it is, I've been involved with the Haywards Heath Town Council for a long time, never really got any satisfaction from them, and discussing that, yes, we do need a burial ground, and yes, we do need allotments. But I've never heard any proper discussion about actually where it should be located, how it's dreamt up where it is in the middle of the prime country park area that I go along regular. So I think we ought to look at that. Now, when we did a site visit on Monday, we went nowhere near where the country park is designated on our briefing here. No photographs were shown of it here, but it looks to me a very nice, suitable sort of burial ground area, to be honest with you. And where would you put the allotments that are, you know, we've got allotments on a very exposed site. And, you know, we went down to Gatehurst Lane the other day, and there was an allotment site there, and I wouldn't really want to see that transposed onto that very nice site. As members said when they did the walkabout, this is a fantastic site, lovely views, etc. And that's what they would like to plant there. I'm not too sure. Actually, from recent planning meetings I've been to and been on that site, I would suggest also a radical solution to that site would be something that's better, would be a residential home.
Can I remind you that we are considering the site?
Yes, I'm talking about the site, and we're talking about what goes on.
We're looking at the plan before us, councillor, please.
I'm just saying about the fact, we've gone from schools to houses, back to houses. So I just mentioned that out of point because I'm talking about residential. So the biodiversity gain, how are you going to improve upon that?
It's an outline planning.
How are you going to improve on providing something suitable compared with the best bit of land?
That will be dealt with at...
No, I'm just saying that nobody's answering these questions.
Well, that is an issue for reserved matters, councillor.
Well, I
not
don't
for us
think,
to consider today.
I don't think that'll be... Anyway, as I say, I was involved listening in on Haywards Heath Town Council. They did discuss the matter in great depth over a number of meetings. And principally, they were concerned about, obviously, the cemetery and the allotments, and they spent quite a lot of effort about getting the percolation test of the water off the site, and there was a big issue of that. I don't know if it's been properly resolved. The other thing is they did look at was the Fox Hill Junction, and you can see that they did a lot of speed checks on that as well. So that was their main interest in that development. The one thing they did not talk about, and that was a really key access to that site, the country park, is through the Silent Woods. And it's a pity that that wasn't mentioned in their report, etc. And we didn't go anywhere near Silent Woods and access into the site. So in summary, obviously I think you can see where I'm coming from. I cannot see that I can support the application that we have in front of us. And I would call for a recorded vote on it. I want a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor.
And I've got lots of other questions.
Stephen, would you like to comment, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll comment on a few things because there are obviously a number of points raised by councillor there. Just going back to the principles, obviously the majority of the site, as we can see in the plan in front of us, is allocated for housing development. So in terms of principle, the majority does conform with that element of the development plan. And in relation to the open space that's allocated in the neighbourhood plan and brought forward in the district plan, you can see it's clearly on this plan that it's the area highlighted in blue here that's unaffected by this planning application. The area of open space that will be brought forward as part of this application is obviously substantial in comparison to the allocation, and the allocation is unaffected by the planning application. So I think that is a clear benefit of the application. If I move on, you can see the extent of land that's allocated for the country open space there, to take pressure off the existing ancient woodland there, and that is a greater area, as we can see, than the land that's currently allocated for open space in the neighbourhood plan. With regard to the comments about ancient woodland and what's been done or resolved to do in the past in terms of access, there is this finger of ancient woodland that runs alongside Hurstwood Lane, and since the previous planning application, the status of ancient woodland and the protection afforded to it in national policy has increased under the national guidance in the NPPF, and that now talks about wholly exceptional circumstances where you should have development that adversely affects ancient woodland. So you're talking big infrastructure projects, HS2, that type of thing, where ancient woodland might be acceptable to be adversely impacted. So that's why, one of the reasons why the applicants have looked at moving the school down here, so it will be more easily accessed rather than up here, because you would now have to have a very quite a circuitous route to get into the school. So that status of ancient woodland has changed, and it was in the last revision of the NPPF. And I think you're right that the Town Council has done quite a bit of work in terms of ground conditions, etc., in relation to the burial ground or land for the burial ground. And you'll see from the committee report that initially the Environment Agency did object to the scheme and had concerns, but because of the work that Town Council and the applicants have done, they have now been able to address those concerns, and the Environment Agency is satisfied that that is a suitable land use to take place there, that the burial ground, and there won't be an adverse impact in terms of drainage on the site. So there has that work has been done. I think that's probably it in terms of those main concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's been quite interesting listening to the comments. What I will say, especially about the junction on Hurstwood Lane, Fox Hill Lane. I think we've got to look at this overall, because going back to the Haywarth Heath Town Council, they've overall not objected to this application. In fact, they supported it. The only issue they have is with that junction being signalised. I think Mr. Gledall has, and it's in the report, has highlighted why that would be very problematic to signalise that junction due to the access into the Fox and Hounds public house and the private driveway. And then bearing in mind condition 22 as a speed management measures to be put in place, so that is conditioned. Because the highways are actually supporting this, and as we all know, it's very difficult to go against highways, and just members to bear in mind that if this went to the inspector, he might well throw it out. Another thing that I think we need to consider, we need to look at the district's council's 5-year housing land supply, which is quite crucial, and I think we need to remind ourselves of this. So whether we want a signalised junction there, which, okay, if it was in the real world, yeah, but obviously the reason is we can't have it, that's fine, but you've got to look at the overall thing, how the inspector would look at this, and we have a Puffin crossing that is, as said, that will slow down traffic just further up the road outside the Mermaid Cottage. So I think that we be very mindful to that we was deemed to refuse this position. I think we could be in trouble with the inspector maybe, and I think we need to look at the fact and reiterate again that is crucial for our 5-year housing land supply. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stillman. Are there any other members that wish to speak? Councillor Bergreen.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, we're supportive of this application. I'm just disappointed that at this late time in the day that we're sitting here discussing some very important access and traffic conditions. I'm just surprised that some of this couldn't have been highlighted, more importantly, early on in the application. But sorry, it's just a comment.
Yeah. Does anyone wish to comment on what's been said? Sorry, Sally. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think councillors need to remember that the application before you has been long in gestation, and it's not the first application on this site. It is the second. So there's been a lot of consideration and a lot of work with town councillors and the community in terms of arriving at the solution. We must remember that it is an allocated site, and actually it's not just the housing allocation. If you could go back to the map, you'll notice that there is a parcel there that's yellow with red hatching, which is the allocation for the allotments and burial grounds, and that is exactly where it's proposed within the application. So it's not just the residential that's in conformity with the neighbourhood plan, it is also the location of that burial ground. I think we have to remember, in terms of highways considerations, that again, there has been much discussion and consideration about that, but what you have before you is something that has been supported by the Highways Authority. And you have to consider what is before you when you're determining the application. I understand and hear the sense of disappointment, but I think we must also remember the planning conditions that have been put in place in terms of managing speed through and to that junction. So I think that's all I want to say, Councillor.
Do you gentlemen wish to make any further comments? No? Okay.
No other speakers.
If there's no other speakers, can I have a proposal for the recommendation, please?
Recommend approval, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sweatman. Can I have a seconder, please? Are there 5 members that want a recorded vote? I took advice and I was advised that it was 5 members.
I think the legal officer has
Yeah.
something that she wishes to say.
The council rules say that a member may request, after the vote is taken, that their vote is recorded in the minutes.
Okay. Right, do I have a seconder for the motion?
Councillor.
Sorry, okay. Sorry, either of the councillors, thank you very much. Can we move to the vote then, please, councillors? Right, the vote is now closed. 7 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention. So the recommendation, which I will read out for the benefit of people, is that it's recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the completion of a satisfactory S106 legal agreement to secure affordable housing, biodiversity, net gain, infrastructure contributions and highway works. The primary school land transfer, the burial ground, allotment and country park transfer and the suggested conditions in Appendix A. Recommendation B, which has been amended by the amendment in the update sheet today, is that recommended that if the applicants have not entered into a satisfactory S106 legal agreement to secure the affordable housing, biodiversity, net gain and infrastructure payments and highway works and the primary school land transfer, the burial ground allotment and country park transfer by the 10th of November 2023, then the application shall be refused at the discretion of the Assistant Director, Planning and Sustainable Economy for the following reasons. The proposal fails to provide the required infrastructure contributions, the primary school land transfer, the burial ground allotment and country park transfers, highway works to serve the development, fails to ensure appropriate biodiversity, net gain and the required affordable housing. The proposal therefore conflicts with policies DP20, DP21 and DP31 of the Miss Sussex District Plan 2031, sorry. Right, there are no items recommended for refusal. So I move on to item 8, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due to notice of which has been given. I have none. I'd like to thank all the speakers this evening and thank the members for the long and thorough discussions that have taken place. Thank you to the officers, and I close the meeting at 17:29. Can you members still remain seated until the live stream is turned off, please?